moment. There we go. Something's wrong with the camera. I know exactly what's wrong with the camera. It's not going to change it. I'm going to have to. What's up, everybody? What's up? What's up? What's up? YouTube. My camera is on the wrong. I don't know what's wrong with it, actually. Virtual camera? Let's not do that. Oh. I don't know. What's up, everybody? What's up? What's up? Trying to set up YouTube, but I guess it ain't gonna act right. What states are we from? What states are we from? Trying to see if I missed anything. Let's share it, and then we can yap. I don't see how these people do this stuff all day. What's up, everybody? What's up? What's up? What's up? What states are we from? What states are we from? Let's call YouTube. All right, let's minimize that. There we go. Pennsylvania, Florida. What's up, everybody? What's up? What's up? Any questions? Any questions? I'm going to try to pull up some dictionaries here. Let's publish that. And we'll see what we want to talk about today. Pennsylvania. When did Pennsylvania become a colony? That's the question. Let's see. I might have that in a case. Dictionaries. We'll do that in a second. Pennsylvania, 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 Pennsylvania. LMNOP, Pennsylvania. Let me see here. Here we go. The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania said, "We are then to regard the Revolutionary War as emancipating every acre of soil of Pennsylvania from the grand characteristics of the feudal system." They said, something right here. Yeah, it says it again, I guess. It says, "But then came the revolution, which threw off the dominion of the mother country and established the independent sovereignty of the state. This sovereign state proceeded to transfer to the Commonwealth every estate, right, title, interest, property, claim, demand of the proprieties as fully as they held them on the 4th day of July, 1776, and all royalties, franchises, and lordships granted in the charter of King Charles II were vested in the state." So if you're from Pennsylvania, I would go learn about King Charles II. If they got, some nerds got a YouTube video about him, watch the video. If they got a book or a biography, try to find it, try to buy it, try to learn. This is your homework assignment, try to figure out how and why King Charles II gave the charter or the grant of land to a guy named William Penn. Because that's significant to the land that you're on. They say in these land patent cases that, well, land doesn't go from corporation to corporation. It goes from sovereign to sovereign. It is transferred between sovereign to sovereign. So, as fully as they held them on the 4th day of July, 1776, that sovereignty was transferred from King George III to you, the Pennsylvanian. And they said that came all the way from a guy named King Charles II. They said King Charles II was the first English king on the land, but whatever King Charles II had, whenever they, whatever it was called before Pennsylvania, before William Penn got there, all of that belongs to the people of Pennsylvania. And they said every right. Okay, well, land, I have this in another Pennsylvania case, I think. Land, yeah, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania said that, no, they didn't. The Supreme Court of California said concerning Pennsylvania that lands in Pennsylvania, it is allodial and not feudal. They said the same about Maryland. They said after the Revolutionary War, land in Maryland became allodial, subject to no tenure. Is Penn State the same as state of Penn? Pennsylvania is the name of a land. It is also the name of a people. The state of is just the name of the government, which we're not talking about. We're talking about sovereigns between sovereigns. So we're talking about a piece of land. We're talking about a people on a piece of land. We're not talking about fictions. Right? So they said this thing is affecting lands in Pennsylvania were allodial. What does that mean? It means subject to no tenure, subject to no office or service. That's what I meant. So if you were born, this is the common law doctrine of, it's called jus soli, Jussoli. Jus soli is a common law doctrine that says, well, you have a right to the land simply because you were born there. That's what all passports are based off of. All passports, even though a passport is a commercial document, but not in the same way that a license is a commercial document. But that thing to that corporation is evidence that you were born on the land. That's why it don't say U.S. citizen on the passport. It say Pennsylvania, comma, USA, Florida, comma, USA. Okay, because that's a nation, right? If somebody else who was naturalized, but they were born in Germany, okay, well, that U.S. passport is going to have Germany. I don't know nothing about Germany, but whatever Germany is, I don't know nothing about Germany, but it'll say Germany on there. It'll say Havana, Cuba on there. It won't say Havana. It won't say the city. It'll say the name of the nation. That's crazy. Does Florida have a similar opinion? Let me see. I have, if you're on the Patreon, on Florida, I have I started finding the beginnings of, where's Florida? If you go to the Sovereignty of Florida post, I can't find Florida. There it is. All states will have it. Do I have it is the question. So I started finding, what is this? This is the Florida Sovereignty post. Okay, at the very bottom, I found the original documents of the land grants from Spain, not grants, but the legislation, the acts of Spain to Florida, which is very important, right? The same way the original 13 will have to go all the way back to either typically the original 13 won't have to go back earlier than 1776, but the states that came after the original 13 states, depending on where whose territory you were under before then, you'll have to go back to that previous sovereign. Okay, so the state of Florida is not sovereign, right? So you would have to go to Spain, because whoever was the king of Spain at that time, all the way until Florida became a U.S. territory, and then up until Florida became a sovereign state of the Union, you would have to trace that. So I got Florida here. It says that land titles in Florida are predicated upon patents from the United States to private ownership. And it says the lands, actually, I uploaded this. Yeah, I have it. The Florida statutes of all of this. They said private ownership of land ceded to the United States by treaty of cession from Spain. Right? They said the two latter classes of lands belonging to the state by virtue of its sovereignty upon being admitted into the union on equal footing with the original states in all aspects or all respects whatsoever. And then they said whatever that statute was, it was by Article 2 of the Treaty of Spain, dated February 22nd, 1819, and ratified February 1821. His Catholic Majesty cedes to the United States in full property and sovereignty all of the territories which belong to him, situated to the eastward of the Mississippi, known by the name of East and West Florida. Right? So when you start working on your land patents, trying to get those, you'll have to go back from the last person who previously owned that plot of land. You'll have to go all the way back to whoever the king of Spain was. You have to prove that in your chain of title. And it's the hardest thing you'll ever do, because before the year 1970, they all wrote in cursive. And guess what they don't teach us in school no more? Right? So yeah, for Florida, let me see. I have a book. Let me see what I got on Florida on the book. I need to put it on the website, but I have a book over about it's about 300. You can't see it, it's backwards. But now it'll be hard for me to see it because it'll be backwards for me. But it's I got about 300 cases in here about land patents. Like some of them they lost the case, but you still learn from the case. Let me see here if I can pull it up. See what I got on Florida. I felt like I just found it not too long ago. But yeah, that's great reading if you want to learn, start getting that mindset. Because even if you get the land patent, they still act like they don't want to hear nothing about no land patents. Talking about you don't have to pay no property. They don't want to hear that. They still gonna try you. They still gonna try to take you to court. All right, let's see. Florida. I feel like I just found this not too long ago. Yeah, we got Florida, yada, yada, yada. Oh, yeah, I did find this. Who is this? I think this is the United States Supreme Court talking about Florida. They said, let me see if I posted this. I feel like I would have posted this. Well, I did say this. I found the first volume of the Florida Supreme Court cases, and they said the issue that they brought was this proceeding is contrary to the course of common law. They said all equity, attachment laws, tax sales, admiralty cases, and summary proceedings are contrary to the course of the common law. But what case is this? This is a federal case. They're talking about Florida, though. They said a state cannot impose a tax on lands granted with an exemption from taxation. What's that? That's that land patent. Let me see. Yeah, I got. They said this appeal from the decree from a superior court in the Eastern District of the Territory of Florida. This was when they were a territory, I think. But they said that in this case, a patent under the seal of the United States or a state is conclusive proof of the act granting by its authority, with exemplification is a record of absolute verity. Yada, yada, yada. All other questions are settled by the decision made or the act done by the tribunal or officer, which is, they're talking about the Bureau of Land Management. They said it passes no other right than that of the public. If land is granted by a state, its legislative power is incompetent to annul the grant and grant the land to another. And then they say a state cannot impose tax on land granted with an exemption from taxation. And then they cite another federal case to prove that. I'll post that on the Patreon tonight. I was able to get my land information from the Bureau of Land Management. Nice. So you got the actual patent, or you got your chain approved? I got 5 books on land patents on the Patreon. Let me see, pull them up. It was the document with the initial signature of the president. You might have got it for real. Yeah, that's it. It says it should say something like, to all who these present, yada yada yada. It'll say to his heirs forever at the bottom of it. Let me see. Where's my land patent stuff? Let me see. Yeah, I got the picture on the yeah. To all whom these present shall come greetings. It say that on it. It says, now know ye the United States of America, yada yada yada. Yeah, because technically, if it comes from the Bureau of Land Management, it's coming from the executive branch of government, which everything done by the executive branch of the government has federally has a president signature of whoever the president was at that time. Where are the books at? Law, land library, land library, land library, land library, land library. I got 5, 6 books. Let's see. Let's go to library. I forgot what I was talking about. Oh. Yep, it had it in cursive. There you go. Land library, land library. Boom, here we go. Yep, I got 2 of Ron Gibson's books. I got 3, 4, 5, 6 books on land patents, all downloadable. There you go. Somebody got it. So yeah, this stuff is incredibly important. They said that's the hardest thing you'll do. Y'all want to fight your little traffic tickets. Yeah, wait till you get that land patent. See who come after you. Yep. All right. I forgot what I was talking about. What else? What else? Any questions? Any questions? Let's read some land patent stuff. Let's see what we got since we're on the topic. But I want to read that again though. So they said the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania said that the sovereignty of King Charles II was transferred to Pennsylvania, to the people of Pennsylvania. Why? Because who's in charge of Pennsylvania? Who's supposed to be in charge of Pennsylvania? Oh crap, I forgot to put my YouTube comments up. Sorry, YouTube. Uh, don't nobody watch this stuff. Dang, that thing got my phone blast. I think it messed up my camera stuff. What other states? What states are we from? What states are we from? Let's go back. All right. So yeah, said that we are then to regard the revolution emancipating every acre of soil from Pennsylvania from the grand characteristics of the feudal system. They said, but then came the revolution. It threw off the dominion of the mother country and established the independent sovereignty of the state. They said a sovereign state called Pennsylvania proceeded to transfer to the Commonwealth every estate, right, title, interest, property, claim, and demand of the proprieties as fully as they held them on the 4th day of July, and all royalties, franchises, lordships granted in the charter of King Charles II. Okay, so if you're from Pennsylvania, I would go find that charter of King Charles II. Then the Supreme Court of California said, well, lands in Pennsylvania are allodial. They said land in Maryland became allodial after the revolution. Let's see. Land patent, land patent, land patent. Let's read some land patent stuff. Any questions, or let me know what state you're from. I'll see what I got. Oh, yeah, I have a Florida library too. I have the Handbook of Florida Land Titles. Got that. I forgot I had that book. Yeah, it's over 400 Supreme Court case, Florida Supreme Court cases in that book. Oh, yeah. And then I got the Land Laws of Florida. I forgot I got these books. See, I got so much stuff. I don't even realize I'd be having everything because I'll find it, compile it, file it, find it, compile it, find it, compile it. All right, let me go oldest to newest. I also have uh, I have 14 episodes of a dude going all the history of the country. He goes over the 13 colonies, how they got their land and from who. And he goes over the entire, I mean, that thing's like a college lecture on the history of land in America. I have that on the Patreon. All right, let me go. Nothing beats a land patent. All right. So who is this? The Supreme Court said nothing passes as a perfect title to public land but a land patent. They said we consider to be true that nothing but a patent passes as a perfect and consummate title. They said to hold that a party could recover against the patent to whom resided the perfect title, this is a proposition of law and it cannot be maintained. They say you get a land patent or a land grant, that grant of so many acres of land was the law, and it was recorded as the law on the books of the state. They said when the United States has parted with title by a patent issued, the title so granted cannot be impaired. They said the patent of the government issued upon the direction of the land department is unassailable. Unassailable. What's unassailable? Unable to be attacked, questioned, or defeated. Unable to. Somebody said Illinois. Let's see what I got about Illinois. This is the Supreme Court. They said this is writ of error to the Supreme Court of Illinois, because whensoever a tract of land shall have once been legally appropriated to any purpose, no subsequent law or proclamation or sale would be construed to embrace it or to operate upon it. Nothing passes a perfect title to public land but a land patent. They said, this is the Supreme Court of Illinois. They said the English doctrine in relation to real estate is that there can be no adverse possession against the crown, nor against its grantee. Who's the crown of Illinois? They said there can be no doubt that the same principles are applicable to the government of the United States. It possesses the same rights of sovereignty and prerogative in respect to public land by the right of eminent domain, which is absolute, and the exclusive owner of all public lands, which it has not alienated or appropriated. They said on the sale of the land by the United States, the patent transfers to the purchaser the entire legal estate to the full extent that the government held it. This is the Supreme Court of Illinois. So didn't we just read a case? They were correct in Illinois. What year was that? And then 10 years later, they corrected it. They said, all right, yep, they got it. Yeah, this land patent stuff nasty. They don't talk about it at all. They got, boy, you want to try to look up a video about land patent, boy, you think you got some bots on your videos. Boy, they send the bots. No, it don't, you can't, it doesn't get rid of taxes. It doesn't get rid of, yeah. But when they act like they do a tax sale on it, people try to, whoever buys the tax sale tries to mortgage it and tries to insure it, and they don't have that public domain number because that domain number doesn't exist anymore. So when they try to, they act like they sell it in a tax sale because you don't pay whatever once you got the land patent. Okay, well, they're gonna act like they sold it, and whoever thought they bought it, they'll go back to the government like, hey, I can't insure this house or this property, or they won't let me get a mortgage on it because they said they don't have this public domain number. Why? Because when you get that land patent, it takes that land out of the public domain. So all the people, all the other fictitious corporations that use fictions to try to grab and act like they have title. Well, if you don't have the land patent and that land patent or that tract of land in that land patent is not in the public domain anymore, well, there's no way for them to attach to it. How does a country or state take land under eminent domain when they don't own it? Well, the question is not, well, they never own it. The feds can never own land. But according to the law of nations, they have public land. They can only have what they think is eminent domain over public property. If you don't have a land patent for that tract of land, that land is in the public domain. This is the big deception. When these people migrated to this country under the authority of the King of England, whoever was King, I guess King James or whatever. Okay, well, that stuff was public. And when they claimed a piece of land, well, up until the revolution, at the revolution, when they claimed a piece of land, it took it out of the public domain. And they weren't granted, there were no land patents then, but they could prove through the original land grants or the land charters. That's why I was telling whoever's from Pennsylvania, okay, well, you can get a land patent now. But those original land grants were through the charters of who originally had them, right? So if you're from Pennsylvania, well, King Charles the second would have had that land originally, right? And then you pass down all the way to King George III. Okay, well, in 1783 at the Treaty of Peace, or the Treaty of Paris, whatever they call it. Okay, well, they literally gave them pieces of paper and said, okay, well, all this tract of land is now, just Pennsylvania has it. So they gave it to the government of Pennsylvania. And then in 1787, with the federal constitution, they gave commerce and they gave admiralty and they gave uh, the things pertaining to land grants of nations. This is all in Article 3 to the feds. And then over the years, they set up a Bureau of Land Management or a land department. So if you don't have a land patent or a land grant from, before there was such thing as a land patent, then technically that is considered public property because it's still, to them, it's still on their books. I hope that makes sense. It is weird. It's the hardest thing. Can my family reclaim the land patent already on file? If nobody has the land patent currently, oh well, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be born in Pennsylvania. If you plan on living there or staying there or having land there, uh, can my family reclaim the land patent already on file? If nobody else claims it, you would still have to do. I'm assuming you don't have one, or you never had one, or your family's never had one. Then you would have to go to the last person who's ever had the land patent. This is through the chain of title. If you've never done a chain of title, you're going to have to go from 2026 all the way back to whoever had the land patent. And if nobody's had a land patent, you have to go all the way back to, depending on your state, 1776. This is very hard. I have my land patent from the Bureau of Land Management. Cool. Have you stopped paying though? That's the real question. That's the real question. I don't have a chain of title. Then how did you get it? How did you get a land patent without it? Or unless it was passed down to you. Because remember, the titles are passed from sovereign to sovereign. So let's say, for instance, the last person who had a land patent was in the 1800s. Okay, well, you would have to have gone back to the 1800s because that's where the sovereignty of that piece of land would have ended. So how did you get a land patent without a title, or did you not do it and somebody else did it? You can totally get one. I reverse engineer, but how? How did you do it? You don't need a chain to get the land patent. Well, how do you know the person previous to you doesn't have it and their family doesn't have it? Like, how would you know that? When I go to the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, my family's name is on 160 acres in South Dakota from the 1860s. Oh, well, if you're still on that land, then yeah, you just get your land patent. The patent is for a massive plot of land. Right. How did you get it? Here, let me try something that I don't do. I don't know how to add people. Let me see. How do I join? How do people come up? Invite. Oh, we're getting in trouble. Let's see. Let's see. I don't know how that works. Oh, I invited the wrong person. Or maybe I didn't. I don't know. There we go. How do I invited the wrong person. There we go. I did that one. I don't know how to invite Florida. Or Florida, can you request to come up? I don't know how to do that. Florida and Illinois, the two people who say they got something from the Bureau of Land Management. All right, I'm back. Okay, how do I? I'm not good at technology. Invitation sent. That's not what I want. See, that's not. There we go. All right, now let me get Florida on. Hold on. I gotta turn my phone down because I don't want it to echo. And then Florida, let me see how I add Florida. Uh, or Florida, can you request? There we go. There we go. I I can hear you. Can you hear me? All right, Florida, you on? All right. So what papers do you guys have from the Bureau of Land Management? Okay. Okay. I believe y'all. I don't have no land patent. I sold my land. I had 7 acres in North Carolina. I sold it once I started learning about land patents because obviously they say the title is not or the deed is not actual proof of ownership of the land. Right. Okay. So the last thing you received was a deed from a mortgage. Okay, so that's the last thing. Okay. They say it's incredibly hard. That's what they said. They said it's all in cursive. You can't read it. Right. 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 Uh, I've heard they turned everything essentially into a school or something like that, a school district. Yeah. Mm. Okay, that's what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, all I had to do was get my it's weird. It's like 32 Southwest by
You got your
10
meets and bounds.
meets and bounds.
There you
Yes,
go.
that's it. Meets and bounds. So I got my meets and bounds, and then I took that information and went on to BLM, and I found out, not all land is registered at the BLM.
Right.
There's
Right.
certain
Yeah, it
parts
depends
where
on the
they really
state
are.
too. I think Texas, they have
Exactly.
their own or something like that.
Yes. So it took me about 10 minutes, and I found it right away. And you basically just I ordered a certified version of it, and it's pretty cool. It came like a couple weeks later, but it doesn't really help me with anything. But
It's got your name
um,
on it or your family's name on it.
no, it's the original. I'm still looking for it. It's the original text, like signed by the president at that time, in the name of the man who was the first one who got land.
Okay, that's
Okay.
different.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's making sense.
Okay.
Because, and I don't know everything, but from what I've learned, it's because we can't do that chain of title because it's so hard.
It is so hard. I
Because
definitely
it
miss
would
the
be
historian.
that chain of title from that guy. Well, you said that's the original one,
Yes.
so you don't know who was the last one with it because of the chain of
So
title.
I got, like I said, I got to about the 60s, and it started getting dicey because it was transferred into a trust at some point, and
Mm.
then it got really difficult to figure out what happened. And then and then after the trust, then I was like looking through, it was like old books and stuff, and a big old,
Oh yeah, they said the county recorder they don't help with nothing. They say good luck. There you go. There's all the books.
exactly. I was like trying to hire the girl that worked there. She knew what she was doing. She knew.
Oh
And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we can't." She wanted to help me. I was like, "I'll pay you. Like, it'll be a side job. It'll be."
yeah.
But
All right. Let
that
me.
was a couple years ago.
So Florida, what do you have?
Mine's is pretty much similar. I didn't go through all the detail that she went into to get to start chasing the chain of title backwards, but I was able to, again, when I got the deed, it has whatever the plot number, so I got the meets and bounds, searched that on BLM, found the actual, I think it was like 160 acres or something that they then subdivided up the land into, so I got it for that particular subdivision. And then yeah, mine is pretty much like all the original paper. It's a copy of the original one, but I mean, it looks like it was something handwritten in cursive,
Right.
and it's about 20. It's like it looks like about 20 pages of something. It starts off with the United States of America, and then to all whom, and then I can't read the rest of
Right.
it.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay. So yours, Illinois, is yours about 20 pages as well?
I just
It.
got one. It's one giant. It's big. It's really big.
Florida, is your name on yours or your family's
No,
name?
no, there's no names on it or anything like that. I was looking for the one because when I started looking it up, I actually saw the person that got the original 160 acres. I don't remember. I think I saw it on the BLM site,
Hmm.
and it said who they gave it to. It was like some
Yeah,
person, and then it started showing how they subdivided it up into different sections.
that's what I did.
Oh,
The
okay,
original.
okay, okay. So those are not, and I'm not trying to correct them, but I'm just trying to get like a clear picture. They don't have. They're supposed to have names on. They're supposed to have. To my understand, that's what these books are saying. They're supposed to have your name on them, and that plot of land is no longer supposed to be in the public domain. But again, this is before the concept of like school districts, and they started commercializing everything, especially after the Civil War. That's when it would have really, like, they would have really introduced all this, like y'all said, these grids and all these different, like, the way they measure it outside of the meets and bounds. So, from my understanding, because I don't have a land patent, but everything I'm reading, it is supposed to say somebody's name on it, and I think that would have been the result of the chain of title.
Mine has the guy's name on it.
And that you said that was the original.
Yeah, that was the first one. He got like the whatever it was, 60 by 60.
When you're in Illinois, when did Illinois become a territory? What year is that?
1818.
1818? Oh, that's what year is on there?
1818 is when they became
A territory.
territory. The land patent, I believe, was a little bit after.
Oh yeah, that's right. But it would have still they would have still conveyed that through whatever land grant. They called it a land grant before they called it a land patent.
Okay.
Because when they migrated here, technically the only proof of what we think is constitutional citizenship would have been land. They didn't have no. They said, like, for instance, and it was up to the state. So like North Carolina said, well, if you claimed a piece of land and you proved that you were inhabited or you inhabited it for 2 years, then they would give you a land grant. Either, I guess it's from the state at that time, and then that was proof that you were a constitutional citizen. And they said that it's in the Dred Scott versus Sanford case.
Okay.
And I think they mentioned a North Carolina case in there. It's in the it's not the main body. It's at the bottom where they give all the judges give all their like I forgot the
Oh my God, I found it. I found it.
name. Is a year on yours, Florida?
Yeah, I'm reading mine right now. The part of this that looks like it was typed up. It says, according to the revisions of the Act of Congress, April 1820.
1820.
The sale of public lands, and it says it was given to a Thomas B. Jackson. Is the name of here?
And that was 1820.
1820. Yeah.
Okay, so when was Florida? When did Florida first become a territory? Did Florida? Because we just read it, didn't we? We just read it. We know exactly when they became a territory. We just read it. Let's go back to Florida. I got the actual. It was on the Florida State University website. They have those statutes on there. Let me go back to Florida. Sorry. Florida became a territory in 1819. What year was that?
1820.
Boom. He said the article of the Treaty of Spain dated February 22nd, 1819, and ratified February 22nd, 1821. Yeah. So 1820 is literally in the middle of that. And that's when whoever the king of Spain was uh, gave that land to the feds at the time. Because the feds can't own it, they hold it. And it is our response. We didn't know that then, and they didn't know that. But it's our responsibility to claim that land and get it out of the public domain. And that would have been quote unquote proof of your sovereignty.
Do you know how or if that actually happened? If people, when they did claim the land properly and owned it, a allodial title, how did that work? How did they do that?
Like that, I don't know totally, but from that North Carolina thing, they said they got a piece of paper that said, that piece of land, those meets and bounds were theirs.
Okay.
So that I have that little podcast thing on the Patreon, right? This dude goes over
Yeah.
how they gave land, how they claimed it, either from the colonial days and up until they became a union. So
I'm
it's
just trying to figure out at what point did it go from allodial to the situation we're in now,
Oh.
where it is public? 'Cause it's public.
oh yeah, like I think that was the Civil War for sure. I think what was it? No, I wouldn't say the War of 1812. I would literally say the Civil War. Whenever those school districts, this is what I learned. This is how I knew land patents were real. So I've worked in the oil field for about 6 or 7 years now. And when I was a truck driver, we would go to in West Texas and New Mexico. We would go to these random. I mean, that's all over the oil field in general. We would go to random pieces of land, right? And they would be drilling on it or whatever. Okay, well, we get the certain pieces of land. Okay, and they'll be easy. They have stop signs, they have roads, and all this stuff. And then we get to certain pieces of land. We could see the rig from the main road, but it would take us 2 hours to go around to get to this drilling rig because that the quote unquote state of Texas or the state of New Mexico didn't have. I have a California case that said, well, sometimes the state makes a public easement claim on them. All right, that says, hey, we want to use this for public use. We have a public use. So we'll create a road through here, and there's nothing you can do about it. Why? Because they didn't have a land patent. Okay, well, in West Texas, apparently people still own that land since before there was such thing as a Texas.
Wow.
And people in New Mexico still own that family still own that piece of land before there was such thing as a New Mexico or New Mexico. I guess it was all Mexico at one point. But since whenever Spain owned it, people and families still own that land. So today, the state of Texas can't put a school district, a federal school district around it. And they were calling those things land grants because they could prove uh, that whoever the king of Spain was or whoever was over Mexico during that time period that they claimed it, they could prove that land all the way until there was such thing as a New Mexico territory or well, Texas was never a territory, but before Texas joined the Union or before Texas was independent, I think they were independent for like 9 years before they joined the Union. So we go to oil field locations today, and you're like, well, why couldn't we just? You're like, it's truly private property. People are getting oil and getting paid because these families have kept that same piece. That's what I'm saying. On that land patent, it's supposed to say, and it may say it, but it's supposed to have your name and it's supposed to say to your heirs and assigns forever. And every time somebody joins that family, they'll just add that name to that document, and maybe they can request additional copies of it or whatever. But apparently,
How do we bring it forward?
well, that chain of title is what I've learned. Chain of title is important. Prove that it went from Florida 1820 all the way to him, and then from Illinois.
Then I can to reissue it.
Well, the Bureau of Land Management is on behalf of the president, so you would send it back according to. I have. He just passed away in 2025. Yeah, Ron Gibson. He passed. See, this is why I hate this stuff because it's like, dang, we could have. Hey, let's just teach everything, right? Like, but now he's passed away in July. So, and this is my fault too. He had one last conference, and I told myself, you need to get there. It was in Wisconsin in the summertime. There was no snow, and I freaking was like, maybe I'll get there, maybe I won't. And I procrastinated, and I didn't know his health or condition, and now it happened. So, but from everything that I've seen from his videos and all of his books, he says that chain of title is most important, and that's the thing you submit, and then you make a claim, and like they say, you can do it at the sheriff's office or the county, one of the county places, and you put it on display for 60 days, or you can put it in the newspaper. And as long as nobody makes a claim to it, then you submit it to the Bureau of Land Management, and that paper should have your name on it, your family's name on it.
They should reissue it.
Yep, in your name, because you would have sent that to them, and they would have to update that, hey, these are the last people that have ever had that patent.
So let me ask you something.
Mm-hmm.
Where is that written in any current policies?
Oh yeah, I got all this on the Patreon. These are all Supreme Court cases. Yeah, let's keep reading. Yeah.
There's a lot there.
Yeah, go to collections. If that's the easiest way to navigate the Patreon, every time I find something, I try my best. When I first started, I didn't do it, so there's a lot that's unattached. But the land patent stuff is pretty attached. So all those cases.
Your Patreon, your collection of work is just absolutely incredible. I'm so grateful I found you, and I appreciate all of your hard work and all of your research. I really do.
Thank you. Let me see if I can find this case. Yeah, they say had a question. It's in the land patent thing, so you can just search whatever collection I have. It should say how to get a land patent. Okay, here we go. So it says the Supreme Court. No, this is the Supreme Court of Illinois. This is the Illinois Appeal Court. They said the no United States patent conveying title to this land appear of record in the office of whatever county recorder. They said a plaintiff must establish title to land. They established this by showing a chain of title leading back to the United States. So in your instance, it would go back to 1818. But you got the guy who got it. So you just have to work. Not that this is easy, but you have to work to whoever's on that land patent right now. You got to go all the way back to that dude. And go all the way down. It's hard. They say it's the hardest thing and that's why they took cursive away from. I remember I'm in my 30s. I remember when I first started school, I used to write cursive fluently, y'all. It's crazy. And now I can't. I can only sign my name because they took that. It's when I was in school when they first introduced Microsoft, like Word and all of that stuff. So whatever Windows 90, all of that. I was in elementary school when they introduced that stuff. So we stopped writing like for real after that. Like y'all remember Minesweep and Solitaire? Well, we played the first editions of those games as kids. And after that, we no longer knew penmanship. We no longer knew how to write. And that's the thing that I used to be able to read. You used to be able to read any of that. I found for those who yeah, they got this thing, people talk about the passports and they say do not detain you on them. Okay, well, I found an old military paper on it where they say you have to get a passport. When you get a passport, it will keep you from arrest and detention once it's issued to you from the Department of State. And that phrase was in cursive, so I copied and pasted it into Google Docs because I couldn't read the cursive. But that's exactly what it said on. Actually, I have it. But yeah, so it's the cursive. That's the thing they took away from us. They said the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, all of that was written in cursive. That wasn't like they didn't write individual letters. No, they were mad. They were writing that thing real quick. So that's the thing that they say that's the hardest thing is establish this title by showing a chain of title leading back to the United States. Now that is specific. If you're one of the original 13 states, that will suck. But if you're part of one of these later states, it's not as bad because it's a totally different English in the 1700s than it is in the 1800s, right? And now it's a totally different English from the 50s and the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's the thing.
Okay. All right.
So get all those books. Go download all those books. Search Land Library. Read them. Most people don't know Ron Gibson has 2 books. And I did thankfully get those books before he passed away. But he has 2 books on land. So everybody has the land patent book, but he has another one on property rights. And I have that on the Patreon as well. And I got another guy named Johnny Liberty. He's got 2 books. He did a revision in 2014 of his original book. And then I found some other people, they made books on land patents. And so it's a lot of info on there. Say it again.
Do you know anybody personally who's gotten anywhere with a land patent?
I met someone in Texas one time. We were talking. He said he got one, and he told me that Uh, it had his name on his family's name on it. But he said he was still fighting the courts over proving it to him. And this is the second hardest part. The first hardest part is getting that chain of title done. Once you get the land patent, they still want to fight you. And uh, he said he had a friend who got his land patent, and that's how I learned. Like, okay, well, once you get it, they take that stuff out the public domain, and whoever tries to mortgage it and whoever tries to insure it by way of corporate fictions, they can't do it because they don't have whatever public domain number is taken out. So they said they'll act like they sold that land in a tax sale because you didn't pay. But they said whoever buys that land and tries to insure it or tries to mortgage it, because at an auction, they'll just say, "I'll buy it," and then go to the bank afterwards and try to get a loan for it. But they couldn't get a loan for it and they couldn't get insurance for it.
Okay.
So,
Interesting.
but that was literally a random guy I met in the airport talking about it. So, but I meet a lot of guys in the oil field, and you'd be surprised at the stuff we don't recognize, that the oil field is really old timey. So like they do everything, like everything is still based on, especially for Texas. Texas is a crazy place. Everything's based on the Railroad Commission in Texas. So the Railroad Commission was the very first land grants from Texas to a corporation. And so the reason why traffic and railroad laws are in Texas the way they are is because the Railroad Commission is technically a corporation, and it has the patent to all of those railroads, and so they control essentially on paper all commercial action happening in Texas. So if you want to get, like, for truck drivers in Texas, if you want to get hazmat and do all this stuff, well, you have to go through the Railroad Commission
Really?
instead of going through. I don't know. I think they call it DPS, the Department of Public Safety, and all this other stuff. And when I was a supervisor well, I guess I still am whenever I do work, but whenever I work out there, whenever we complete a job in the oil field, we're not filling out Texas papers or New Mexico papers. We're filling out Railroad Commission papers because they own an insane amount of land out there. And because they got those patents, there's nothing nobody else can do. The state of Texas has to go through them to do everything. That's what, you know what I mean? So they didn't have no choice because they have the land that they have to do what the Railroad Commission tells them to do.
Yeah.
So whoever owns the Railroad Commission, that's really controls Texas. But that's another that's conspiracy. But yeah.
Interesting information coming out right now. It's just I feel like people from all over the country are kind of tearing everything apart.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many groups going through line by line code. What in the hell are they doing?
Yep.
Researching, seeing where's this money going. I know, so I kind of have enjoyed reading Illinois code, and I've come across some really interesting things. And one of the things I've come across is that the school section, like you spoke of earlier, it retains the patent.
Yep. That's what we learned in Texas. That was like, well, when they give us, they don't give us street directions or a zip code or anything. When you go to a piece of land that's on a patent, well, there's no school zone. So they have to give you literal coordinates. So they'll say, okay, well, once you get off I-20, go 3 miles down this road, and then you're going to turn at this cactus or whatever, and then you got to go 3 miles this way. You got to have your speedometer.
What they call a monument.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. Because in some places we go, they are public domain, so it'll have a school district. You'll go to whatever county school district, and that'll be that'll be how you get to it. But yeah, somebody said longitude, like, they'll just give us coordinates and say 3 miles, you'll see a bush, turn at the bush. We make fun of it all the time. In the oil field, we don't realize it, but like that's literally, we're on land patent land because we don't know who owns that land. All we see is Chevron, Marathon, but those people get paid because they own that land privately. They can do whatever they want on that land. It's crazy. The oil field is crazy. That's a lot of things that kind of awoke me, whatever that means. But yeah. Florida, you got anything?
Did you ever see the show Landman?
Landman. Oh, no, I didn't see it.
Oh my God, you have to see it.
Is it good?
Yes, you love it, especially if you are a landman. It's all about Texas and it's all about the oil fields.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Florida, you got anything?
No, I don't have anything else to add.
Oh, okay, all right. So chain of title. I think that's the you've done no chain of title work. I'm just trying to just learn.
A little bit. I do a little bit.
I'm talking about Florida, Florida.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I don't know how to do none of this navigating stuff.
Try to break down and see how far back it goes and see if I can get back to
Okay. I think if you now I don't it now they say another thing is these county offices and stuff like that. They're hard to work with sometimes because they don't want to, like somebody said, like, okay, well, they'll just give you a stack of books and say good luck and go find it. Or some of them, all the county stuff is on like I don't know the word for it, but it's like a film thing. You have to try to decipher. But I don't know how much it costs. I'm assuming it can't be cheap. But there are chain of title services that I've heard. I don't know any of them, but they say there are people that I was in Utah one time in the oil field, and they got chain of title services. So see if there's a chain of title service in Illinois and Florida, and see if see how much it costs. I don't know how much it would cost, but
definitely, yeah. I think I started on it, and then as I kind of went through it, and I did some other stuff with the county. I clerk reports and stuff like that to file documents. It's a pain. I'm just like, I don't, I feel like even if I go through all this pain and spend the money, it's not gonna. They're gonna be like, okay, I don't care. Like, just the tax alone. Like, I know it's a separate conversation, but they raised like $6,000 in 1 year.
that's crazy.
Tax. And so that's. I was like, this is ridiculous, and you can't fight it. I mean, you can go and do a city council hearing, but
That's nothing. Yeah, they don't want to hear it. Yeah.
2 grand,
6 grand. That's crazy. No, I got you. I got you, man.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. I'm just gonna read some more stuff. Y'all can hang on what you want to do, but the only reason I grabbed them is because they're on the Patreon. So that's so if anybody else on the Patreon wants to add or something, but I want to read some more of these cases because I think that's important. So yeah, that's an appellate court of Illinois. They said no United States patent conveyed title to this land. No United States patent conveying title to this land appear of record in the office of whatever county recorder. They said a plaintiff must establish title to land by showing a chain of title leading back to the United States. So that if you're one of the original 13, then it possibly will go all the way back to 1776, or you'll go back to the last person who had the title or who had the patent. But if you're one of the later states, you came after the original 13, mainly, well, depending on then too, because you got to see like Tennessee, Kentucky, okay, Ohio, all those guys got to go back to their original state. So if you're in Tennessee, you're gonna have to go all the way back to North Carolina. You have to go all the way, if you're Kentucky, all the way to Virginia, so on and so forth. But yeah, all right. Let me read some other stuff. I read this already. Let me read some. Yeah, the United States Supreme Court said that once the United States has parted with the title by patent issued, the title so granted cannot be impaired. Right. So they said the patent of the government issued upon the direction of the land department is unassailable. Now, people say Texas is different. They say Texas has its own land department. So it depends on your state for sure. If you're one of the original 13, probably the Bureau of Land Management. Or if your state has, I wouldn't know. Your state has a land department, I would ask them. Because they give out patents, but they don't tell the significance of the patent. So just ask the land department of your state, hey, I'm working on a book. Where's the land patent? Where would I get a land patent issued? They said the disposal of public domain cannot be interfered with. Okay, so they're telling us this is the United States Supreme Court. The disposal of public domain cannot be interfered with. nor can such legislation deprive the grantees of the United States of the possession and enjoyment of the property granted by reason of any delay in the transfer of the title. When transferred, the right to possess and enjoy the land would amount to the denial of power of the disposal in Congress. So the goal is to take that piece of land out of the public domain. Then I said again, a land patent is the highest evidence of title and is conclusive as against the government and all claiming under junior patents or titles. And then they say, yada, yada, yada. All right, let me read some other stuff. All right. Let me read some state stuff. I think that'll help. All right. Let's see. Mississippi. And I don't have everybody's state, so I'm sorry. But Mississippi said both cases sustained as valid title. Land patent is evidence that all preliminary steps have been taken to justify its issuance. Supreme Court of Montana. This thing called the land patent is the highest possible evidence of title. A patent for public land, such patent is open to collateral attack. And they cite one case, two case, federal case, Kentucky case, federal case, federal case, federal case, federal case, federal case, federal case, California case, it's a federal case, a Montana 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 case, and it is a Montana case. So there, a lot of this stuff is state Supreme Court records. That is a state. So here's Nebraska. They said this doctrine is established by numerous decisions of the Supreme Court of the United States that err in respect to their duty. The patent cannot be collaterally attacked for such cause. The patent might have lawfully issued. The patent might have lawfully issued, and that against collateral attack. They said that in the patent, the evidence of such determination is unassailable collaterally. Collaterally. I said all right, so that's the Supreme Court of Nebraska. Let's see what else. New York. Yada yada yada. Possession is a necessary ingredient in a complete title to land. The right to property, the right to possession, these being united constitute the complete legal title. The term title in the statute under consideration is limited to the right of possession. The defendant is precluded from all evidence on that point, in which case the action must be discontinued. The plaintiff's case requires such evidence on his part and cannot be received, but the case must be dismissed. Let's see. Massachusetts. Massachusetts said the defendant is entitled to a deed which shall convey clear title to land free from all encumbrances. He agreed to purchase the land and not merely such a stake or interest. I forgot to mention this. This is also important for those who don't already have land. We have to remember these Federal Reserve notes are not United States notes. See, another thing is when people purchased land back in the day, well, they paid for it with United States notes. That's another significant thing. So they paid for the land with United States notes that was redeemable in gold and silver. So when you paid with a United States note versus a Federal Reserve note, well, it was actually being paid for, right? So when you pay for something, what am I trying to say? When you pay for something with the United States note, you're actually paying for it because a certain amount of gold and silver is actually being in the exchange. Today, the county recorder, whoever these people are, the county office cannot register or comprehend that when a deed says that you converted this land from 5 acres of gold or from 5 acre or from 5 ounces of gold to 5 acres of land. They don't have a way to put that in the computer. And so they said they put that deed or that recording of the deed in a special folder, in a special filing cabinet. So they can't put it in the rest as though the Federal Reserve can make a claim on it. I hope that makes sense. Right? They don't want to see, yeah, they don't want everybody to see that. That, oh, well, that's why they got real estate agents, y'all. Because that real estate agent, it may be your little sister, but that's a foreign agent. There's no such thing as a real estate agent in no state constitution. You know what I mean? So they want that real estate agent. That's why they're so aggressive because they want you to use Federal Reserve notes to make that exchange. And I got a million cases that say you're not obligated to use Federal Reserve notes for nothing. They say you do so by consent only. You do so because everybody does it, not because it's the law. There is no law that requires us to use Federal Reserve notes. And I don't know how much trouble I can get in on that, but that goes deep. And when I started learning about these land patent things, they would say that, oh, well, the deed actually says, well, I converted this from, somebody said, I guess, 22 ounces of silver into a half an acre of land. So they said all these things add up, right? So you purchase it, right? Whatever that means. You exchange or convert a commodity for a commodity instead of a commercial merchant practice that says, oh, well, I used a Federal Reserve note for a state of Montana certificate of title. Okay, that's not purchasing anything. That's paper for paper. Both of those can be set on fire, right? But when you convert value for value or commodity for commodity, I mean, they do it on a large level. We don't do it on a small level because they don't want us to do it on a small level, right? So, like farmers markets are the best way to explain this. Okay, well, farmers market, some dude's gonna have his milk from his goats, and somebody's gonna have their spinach from their spinach farm, and they can exchange if they want to, how much milk you want, how much spinach you want, right? Whatever you think is equivalent. Okay, well, 22 ounces of silver, which 22 ounces of silver today is a lot, and so that for a half an acre of land, okay, well, the county office don't have a way to input that. They don't have a ounces of gold section. They just, we'll have to put it in this folder, and then we can never touch it again because there's no way for us to. Right. So this stuff goes deep. That's why this common law. Miss Massachusetts. Massachusetts said that I've already read this. No, I read it. I didn't read it. Massachusetts Supreme Court said that the defendant is entitled to a deed, which I think I did read it. Yeah, I read it. Here I go. I got the land patent statutes. Oh, Michigan. I got Michigan. Let's read Michigan. I agree with the Supreme Court justice. Governmental immunity is not a defense which a county may interpose against the liability for continuing trespass. In Michigan, no city, village, township, county, or any administrative division thereof has been held immune from liability. Okay, so you get that land patent, and then they try to, okay, well, you got a trespass claim. Depending on your state constitution, you got a civil case before a jury. So they say the land patent statutes are the Treaty of Peace, which is its own document by itself, but they got a statute for it. So this is to them federal law. So you got the Treaty of Peace, where they say King George III said that New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Providence Plantations, Kentucky, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia are free, sovereign, and independent states, and he treats with them as such. And then this is another statute for the sale of public lands. They said credit shall not be allowed to purchase. That's what I'm talking about. That when you use a Federal Reserve note, that's not money. Okay, so what they say, well, you can't. I got Supreme Court cases about this state that say, well, uh, when you use promissory negotiable instruments, those are not paying for them. You can't discharge a debt with pieces of paper. What does the Constitution say? No state shall make anything a tender in payment of debt, but what? Okay, so the Fed said in 1820 that credit shall not be allowed for the purchase of money on the sale of any public land. Then they got this thing called the Homesteaders Act. Then, for the land for the benefit of said infants for no other purpose, and the purchaser shall acquire the absolute title by purchase and be entitled to a patent from the United States on payment from the office of fees, sums of money therein. And then that's, I guess that's what they created the land growth and management off of. So yeah, there we go. We're talking about land patents tonight. Let's see. Elodial. Ooh, who is this? It's a whole case. It says a land patent is unimpeachable except when it appears on its own face to be void. The authorities on this point are so uniform and unbroken in the courts. A patent cannot be declared void. A real land patent cannot be declared void at law. A patent, when attacked, cannot be declared void unless procured by actual fraud or void on its face or has been declared void. I forgot where I was going with that. So yeah, I got land patents, two land patent books by Ron Gibson, Allodial Title, and land patents by Johnny Liberty. I got three other books on land patents. I got six books. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, it's only 7 o'clock. On my tea's coming. Any questions? Any questions?
Actually, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So based on what we were just talking about tonight, so the land was in the hand of the sovereigns, the kings, or the 13 colonies, Florida and Spain, so on and so forth.
Right.
It was then transferred over to the federal government, who then issued land patents back to the sovereigns within the states. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. So before the feds, it would have been the states would have granted it if you're one of the original 13. Well, really, yeah, that'd have been just the original 13. And then, yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So now at this point now it's supposed to be in the hands of the sovereigns, the government, the feds have given it back to the sovereign people within the states. So how did it go from being in the hands of the people back into the hands of, we'll say, the county now, like the county that, is managing the lands and charging the taxes for each one of the individuals? How did they get back to them? If even just and I'm talking about just that the thing from the BLM transferred it from the president saying, hey, here's something that I'm just pages because it was all it's like section 23 of township such and such belongs to this person. It's a whole section, and it says section 24, 25, 26. So that's why mine was so long. But so how did we go from being in the hands of this sovereign individual, Mr. Johnson, whatever his name may have been, back into the hands of now this the county reporter saying got it on record and the tax collector saying we're going to collect on that property.
Beautiful, beautiful question. This is what changed my life. I tell the story all the time. These Amish people changed my life, right? This thing called the Civil War changed our country entirely. So, how did we go from not paying taxes until paying taxes? The Civil War, when the federal government illegally invaded the states, and the result of the Civil War was that all of these commercial entities showed up, all these corporate commercial entities showed up called the county office and the all of that stuff. All right. So these Amish people, they came in droves. They didn't all show up at once. Some came through when they were in colonies, then others came when the states were formed. And some came after the Constitution, after the federal Constitution. Okay, well, these people claimed their land, and well, first, before they even got here, they fled, and I'm just going to use names, these people called the Rothschilds and all this stuff. A lot of these Amish people that we know of in the Northeast, most of them came from Germany, and they were fleeing religious persecution from Germany. These people called the Rothschilds and all these bankers were at that time in Germany handing out commercial paper, having people pledge their property, so to speak, over to these private corporate bankers, right? Okay, well, they fled that because they heard not we, but the colonists were fighting. And I'm just going to talk plain tonight. It's Friday. We all having fun. The Roman Catholic Church, because that's where all these bankers ultimately come from. All right. So they all migrated here because they found out they could get land and own it. Right. So a lot came with, I talked about Pennsylvania earlier. A lot of them came when William Penn came over here, because when King Charles gave the land to William Penn, that's how Pennsylvania came out to be, right? So all the people that were, all the religious people that were associated with whatever group William Penn, I think what, the Anabaptists, the Quakers, that's who they were. All the Quakers and all them came over here. Well, they claimed their land under the royal charter from uh, King Charles II to William Penn, and they got all that land from there. Okay, well, from whenever Pennsylvania got set up all the way until the Civil War, these people were not taxed on nothing. They grew their crops, they exchanged it, they did whatever they wanted to with it. Okay, the Civil War comes, the feds invade the states, and they don't leave. That's another. The Civil War thing is a totally nasty subject. All right, so they come and legally invade the states, fight the South, whatever, and as a result, uh, I tell people this all the time. We don't have state governments no more. Whatever you think is the state, that's not our state. We don't. Game over. All right. So these Amish people saw this stuff. They said, "Well, my grandparents and my great grandparents just fled this in Germany and in England." So we remember when they started saying, "Oh, well, now you gotta pledge your land and come record it and come fill out these magical pieces of paper now on behalf of this thing called the state of Pennsylvania." They said, "No, we ain't never had to do that." So these Amish people today are on the exact same land that they've always been on. They had their kids, they taught that all the way down. Now, some of them, they said, "Oh, y'all got air conditioner now," and they gave up this Amish thing, which is, whatever. And so, but those devout Amish people are on the exact same land that their great 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 grandparents came on. And that's how, not that they don't get in trouble, they still get in trouble too. Because when they started, and this is the county office, schools, school districts, all this stuff came as a result of the Civil War. The Civil War, they say, I told this story the other day when I started telling my story on how I started figuring out all this stuff. They said, well, this thing called the Civil War was over states' rights. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool, whatever that means. I don't know what that means. State rights. Yeah, state rights. Sure thing, buddy. Right? But you go look at those Amish people and you're like, oh, those are the state rights. They don't feel when birth certificates, they don't have none of that. I asked them what my own in person with my own mouth. I asked them. I seen them. I said, "Y'all got social security numbers and birth certificates?" They with the little German accents. They said no. I said, "Nope, somebody lied to me." So the Civil War is the reason we are in the situation that we're in. That changed the country's trajectory. They introduced what the Industrial Revolution. All that stuff came as a result of that. I have a book where they said they went from the cottages to plants, to working in plants. And then, for those who are in Michigan, okay, well, they got this guy named Henry Ford, and he starts creating factories and all of that stuff. So they got us to, black people and white people, to leave the land and migrate to cities. And through cities, they introduced and subsequently uh, brainwashed us into believing in all of this fake corporate fictions. So that's how we got into the mess that we're in. Because I promise you, all these court cases, they're not lying. These people did not pay no taxes on no land. There was only two things. There is only two things they could lawfully tax us on: alcohol, and after the Industrial Revolution, gasoline. That's it. That's the only thing we're supposed to be paying. But yeah, that's the answer. Is the Civil War. That Civil War goes, it's nasty. They changed everything.
That's a good history lesson.
Yeah, so I when I met those Amish people, I was working in the oil field there in West Virginia, Ohio, and um, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and I first met them in Ohio. I seen these two little house on the prairie looking ladies. They were carrying milk buckets, and this dude, I was riding in the 18-wheeler with him. We were leaving this location, and he was telling me all about it. I tell the story another time. I'm not gonna say it, but I met a group of, they weren't young. They're probably in their early 20s at a Steak and Shake. They paid cash for their burgers or whatever. And I asked them, I said, "Hey, y'all got, I didn't say it as weird as I'm saying it now, but I tried to be, not weird about it. I was like, y'all got birth certificates like we got birth certificates?" And they said no. And then I met a dude at a gas station because they said they just catch rides here. And um, that dude said no. He had a beard, crazy looking hat. And I said, "Oh, somebody lied to me." And that dude I was riding with, he was like, "Well, yeah, these people," because he's from Pennsylvania. So he said, "Yeah, they've been on this land forever before a lot of this stuff even came about, before the cities and all this stuff." So all cities, all of this stuff is a result of the Civil War. There was only two, what I would call commercial cities at the beginning of the country. You had New York, and then you had Boston. That was it. There was no DC. And maybe Philly. I'll give Philly that. I'll probably give Philly that. They were probably the only three commercialized cities. In the South, Virginia, it was all rural. In North Carolina, South Carolina, it was all rural. Like this was, it's just crazy. After the Civil War, everything changed. I don't know how else to say. Yeah. So, and that's a lot of the deception that comes in. People start learning this stuff, and they don't know they're being lied to because there's a crazy amount of scammers on the internet who are trying to uh, essentially get us to believe that all of this stuff is valid. When when you get on this common law stuff, you'll see that none of that stuff is valid. None of it. That these were not the intentions of the framers of the Constitution or the framers of the original 13 state constitutions. So this land stuff is the most important subject. I've said that for years now. So even I got an American jurisprudence book that says a land patent, it is the documentary evidence having the dignity of a record of the existence of title. It is a deed of the United States. As a deed, its operation is that of a quit claim. It passes as the only title the government has. So this issue of land is incredibly important. how can we benefit from this info? It's our responsibility to start learning the law and spreading it to our communities, not play fake paperwork. We got to start learning the law and we got to start spreading it. The law is the most important thing that we are the most ignorant of, myself included. And it's our responsibility to turn off Netflix, to get off TikTok. TikTok trash anyway. They don't show my stuff to nobody. And we got to start doing homework. We got to start getting these books. We got to start reading these cases. And we got to start spreading the info. We got to start having community. That's our number one issue is community. Yep. So it's there's no, I don't think I'm special, but I don't think there's a reason why all of this stuff is popping. I don't think it's no reason that all of this stuff is popping up. Right? I don't think oh, I'm the only one that no. I think other people got it. Maybe other people either I can explain it well, or other people aren't explaining it well. But I think we all get that. Okay, well, something's wrong. Somebody's lying to me. Like I told that story the other day. Well, if nobody would have stole my wallet and I would have never, they, if I would have never went to the Social Security Administration. Some people have never been to the Social Security Administration. Why? Because they tell you to keep that card in a certain place. Don't lose it. Don't laminate it. Don't do all this stuff. Okay, well, I was the idiot that kept it everywhere. I've had that thing on me every. Not now. I don't have, it, but I had that Social Security card on me everywhere. I went everywhere with it. And some dude stole my wallet, and now I have to go to the Social Security Administration. You're not supposed to go to the Social Security Administration if you don't actually need money. If you're not actually, this is actual law. I have this Social Security law. If you're not actually destitute, you're never supposed to go there. And then I went there, and that dude accidentally told me my biological mother's name, and I said, "Oh, something ain't right. Why isn't something right?" Because I spent my whole adult life going to the state I was born in, and they act like they want to gatekeep all this information and want me to pay thousands of dollars to find out what the feds just accidentally told me. So how come the feds accidentally telling me this stuff, but if I go to the supposed state, they got to go through a judge, get a court order, you got to pay thousands of dollars to this lame ass attorney, and all of this stuff. And I'm like, nah, something ain't right. And it sent me on the journey. Freaking talk about land patents. Are you sovereign? We, the people of my state are sovereign. I'm not sovereign. Jesus is sovereign. But the people of my state in their collective capacity are sovereign. 1000%. Pick a state. I'll prove it. What was I going on? So yeah, it's no, there's no coincidence. You won't believe it. I'm a millennial. I went straight to Facebook. I went to Facebook. I found her name. Obviously, I found her name from the dude at the Social Security Administration. But I went digging because I didn't. Well, my mom's name is pretty generic, so everybody had that name. So I was just DMing people. Everybody, they're like, bro, I have no clue what you're talking about. I'm like, all right, keep moving. And what's hilarious is I was in the South, but I ran not randomly, but I found a cousin in California. He was like, okay, well, if this is who I think you're talking about, then try this number, try this name, try these people, and see if they'll give you more information than I got. And I was like, but he said, I think that's one of my cousins. I don't see him often because I'm on the West Coast. And I'm like, okay, bet. And then that name led me to my biological. I had a phone call with her. From I met her through some aunt that I have gave me her phone number, and then I called her, and then eventually, I eventually met her. So yeah, it's crazy. But they don't. If you're in the system and you are, you're convinced that everything is just honky dory. Like I tell people, I came into this information, I didn't have no people find out this information because they got driver's license issues, or they got tax issues, or they got, whatever issues they got. They got, injured party issues. Okay, well, I didn't have none of that. I was just trying to figure out how the feds accidentally gave me my biological mother's name, and this so-called state uh wanted $1,000. I'm like, this dude accidentally gave it to me. There's no accidents, but you're not supposed to go to that Social Security Administration if you're not destitute. That's what I'm talking about. Social Security, Social Security, Social Security, Social Security. All this. Somebody asked, how can they follow me? I'm on Patreon. That's where I'm at. You want to follow me? I need help. I'm trying to pay for books to be created. I need help. Buy my book. I'm gonna put this on. I'm gonna put this back on tonight. This is the land patent cases. A lot of this stuff is in these land patent cases. It's almost 300. It's not 300. It's almost 300. I got this book. This is about federal jurisdiction. You want to learn about the feds? You want to learn about state sovereignty and the feds? This almost 500 pages. I need help creating books. These are my books. These books are for me. You just get to share my homework. Be very clear. I'm not selling anything. You get some of my homework. Where's my book? This is about the courts. I take this book. You see how beat up this book is? This is my book. I take this thing everywhere. I don't get on. If I go out the country and come back into it, this book comes with me. If I go to the next state over, this book goes with me. This book goes everywhere I go. I created it. I created all these books. Well, when I say created, I compiled all the info. I did the research. I compiled all the info. I verified everything, and I figured out how to create a book. So, and I printed it. But you know what I mean? This is just everything I need to know about the courts. This is, if I'm in any one of the 50 states and they say I committed a crime with no injured party, the third chapter of this book is going to give me a dang good fight in front of a jury. Right? If I want to know what the courts are doing behind my back and why they're doing it, citation. What's a citation? I have the digital book on Patreon, but I don't know how to do it on Patreon. But all these physical books are on constitutionacademy.org. So constitutionacademy.org. But yeah, I need help creating books. This is another one on commercial law. So if you want to learn what went wrong, somebody said about the Civil War, okay, this one gonna tell you. It's gonna tell you about the common law. It's gonna tell you about the Industrial Revolution, the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was a failure his entire life. That's how I know they got fake actors. That dude was a loser. He didn't win anything in his entire life. He didn't win not one argument, not one debate in his political career. He failed at everything. He was a horrible attorney. He was a horrible judge. I don't know if he made judge, but he didn't win no elections. And then magically he becomes the president of the United States. Come on, man. I don't believe nothing they say. They're all liars. They're gonna cut my head off one day, but it's gonna be a good cutoff. I'm gonna make it worth it. Yeah, that dude was a loser. He didn't win at anything, y'all. He wasn't good at anything. You know where I learned that from? I learned that from I gotta turn my heat off. Sorry. I found this book uh on Elijah in the Bible. This dude, his name is, he's probably dead now. Charles Finney. I think his name is Charles Finney. He wrote a book on a biography, not a biography, but like, I don't know what you call it, but like a caricature. If you want to learn about Elijah, he wrote a book about Elijah. What's going on in his day, all that stuff. And the very first like introduction, he talks about Abraham Lincoln. He said Abraham Lincoln failed all of his life. He didn't win nothing. He didn't win no debates. He didn't win no elections. And then magically he was selected for president. I was like, that's not a winner. That's a loser. That's not a hero I want. I'm not voting. And nobody voted for him. They just put him in office. I'm like, nah. And then he magically wins the Civil War. Come on, I don't believe these people. Uh, how long have I been studying this stuff? It's probably been 6 years. I think it was right after 2020. Whenever I got my wallet stolen. That literally was it. I didn't know nothing about. Only thing I knew about in the world was money. All I knew about was gold and silver. That's how I know when I started learning this stuff and these people talking about magical money, birth certificate, and negotiable instrument. I was like, well, yeah, are they giving us gold and silver with this stuff? No, okay, well, I don't believe you. Right? So people still stuck on birth certificates. They never gonna get past that because that's that's what they want. They want free money. They don't want responsibility. They don't want to do no homework. They don't want to learn the law. They don't want truth. They want their bills paid. And good for them. Hopefully they find it. But they never have. So that's why I get in trouble a lot. Because you won't ever have to worry about me being a scammer because I like to work. I work in the oil field. You won't say you helped me get nothing because I went and got it. I went and swung hammers, lift heavy pipes, drive 18 wheelers in the middle of the night on dirt roads where there's no street signs. So there's nothing you know what I mean? Like that's how I know I don't have to be on here every day scamming and trying to get you to. I be forgetting I got books to sell sometimes. I'm like, oh yeah, and I got these books, right? Because I don't I don't need you to believe me. I'm just yapping, but like you gotta be careful who you're listening to. Like, what's their motive? I'm tired of being lied to. That's my motive. These people lied to me my entire life. Like this thing called the state of wherever I was born said that I had to go through all of this fake paperwork to find out who my biological mother was as an adult. And the Fed accidentally gave it to me. I said, "Nope, somebody lying." Right? And then I learned about this thing called the states are sovereign. I'm like, what does that even mean? What do you mean the states are sovereign? And they say, well, yeah, the Civil War was over this thing called state rights. And then ultimately, I mean, the very end of this is, I mean, I'm talking about this about a year now, year and a half. I've been on this common law thing. You know how long it takes to get to the real life common law? People still stuck on birth certificates, y'all. People still trying to get money on those. They say, "Oh, the red letters on the Social Security card, and then there's red letters on the birth certificate, and then there's red numbers on the treasury notes, and then you got an account, and you got an account, and you got to figure out." Like, bro, we don't have time for this, bro. We don't have time for this. We've been invaded. That's what we don't want to admit. The feds are not allowed here, and people cheer for it today. Why? Because we got this thing called television. Okay, well, there was at one point no such thing as television. There was no such thing as newspapers for a while. All right, there was no such thing as the radio and all this stuff. Well, once they introduced all this commercial stuff, is how we start believing it. Right now, we got superhero movies and all this. Okay, well, they done been deceiving us now, so it ain't. You're not gonna convince a dude that the feds aren't in charge. That's my hardest argument. The common law is the hardest thing, bro. It's so hard. It's not hard. It's just old, and it's like okay. If I would have never saw those Amish people, I would have been stuck on Admiralty. Those Amish people, I guess that's how I ultimately got on the or got on the common law. Is because, well, what did they have before? Like somebody said, well, how did we end up paying? But I look at these Amish people, and they not paying. They don't have no birth certificates, y'all. I asked them, you know how crazy that is? I know for a fact they don't like black people. Okay. And the fact that they told me, okay, well, something ain't right. Something's not right. So how did they pay it? How did they not pay it? Okay, well, they lived the exact same life they lived before this thing called the Civil War. They said, no, we seen these bankers show up and start handing out a piece of papers and exchanging their birthright. They say this common law thing was the birthright of the people that migrated to this. And then the Supreme Court of Tennessee and the Supreme Court of Florida said this common law thing comes from the Bible. What do you mean it comes from the Bible? They say, yeah, this thing comes from the scriptures. And then there was another thing. I heard some Some old dead guy. That's all I learned from now is old dead guys. I'm like, oh, I wonder this guy if I can contact him. The same way y'all be, oh, well, do you do consultations? I don't, but I do the same thing to some of these old guys. I'm like, oh, well, okay, okay. But this dude said, well, the Constitution is a brief of common law procedure. And he said, well, everything in he said, some law professor wrote an article years ago that said that 64% of the United States Constitution was based on the book of Deuteronomy. I said, what? No. I started buying Deuteronomy commentaries. I'm like, no, he might be right. He might be right. You start studying Deuteronomy, and they say, well, Deuteronomy is called the Hebrew Constitution. It's called the Hebrew Constitution, y'all. That's what they call it, right? They say the preamble comes from the the book of Deuteronomy. Our preamble, the federal preamble, is not ours. But every state constitution preamble, excuse me, comes from the preamble. Gold and silver comes from the preamble. Uh, they said grand juries, no, not the preamble. So the preamble comes from the book of Deuteronomy. Gold and silver comes from the book of Deuteronomy. The oath of judges come from the book of Deuteronomy. And these people who I don't know nothing about them. They don't know nothing about what we're talking about. But they said this thing called Deuteronomy. It's based on the Decalogue. The Decalogue is the Ten Commandments. Okay, well, this thing called the Decalogue is um, what they say. It is not law like legislation. Like this is like some theology professor. He said, "Well, Deuteronomy is not law as a statute." No lie. He says as a statute. He said this is instruction, like somebody told them. I said, "That's the common law." That's literally what they're talking about. And he went on. He was like, "Yeah." He said, "I want to reiterate this thing called law. This thing, that they call the law is not the thing. It's in this whole book of Deuteronomy is an explanation of the Ten Commandments." And they said the reason why this is so significant is because it's not it's not written legislation. It's instruction, as though it came from a breath or as though it came from a voice. I said, "This is nasty stuff. This is crazy." Right? And they say all these parts. Well, he didn't say that. But looking at some research, all these parts of the Constitution, you trace the origin of it. Well, they say it comes from the common law. Okay, well, you search that principle or whatever, and it'll go all the way back to the Bible. They say the trial by jury comes from um, Jacob, who changed his name to Israel and had 12 sons. It says he taught them the law and the facts. And then you get to the common law. I forgot what year 1050. In the year 1050, he was the king of England. His name was Edward the Confessor. He said they established this thing called a trial by jury because it was mirrored after the 12 patriarchs or the 12 apostles. I said, that's crazy. That's crazy. And then you study this common law thing. They say, well, the common law is before William the Conqueror. You study William the Conqueror when that dude was French and he was I mean, literally under Roman control. And so everything before William the Conqueror would have been that is the common law. It's the unwritten law. They didn't have well, all that came afterwards. And not that that stuff is wrong. It's just not that writ. What is real equity is that it's supposed to be a real principle tracing back from the common law of England, not commercialism. And so a habeas corpus, a mandamus, all those common law writs that we're supposed to be using, well, they all came back from ancient English principles that they did without pieces of paper. Because we're now under a French king or Normandy. Well, now we have to do those things. That's why they got the Magna Carta. They wanted to put their liberties, their unwritten principles on a piece of paper and hold the king accountable to that piece of paper because that was where their commercialism started. So they said, "All right, you like paperwork? Well, either we're gonna bang it out right here, or you gonna sign this paperwork, and you're gonna force it." Right. So that's how they got the Magna Carta because they put those ancient English principles onto a piece of paper because that's how they acknowledge things. They don't do unwritten law, right? But grand jury, okay, grand jury in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights comes from the elders, the elders from the people of Moses, Joshua, and the judges. They were the judges. The judges, the book of Judges, were elders of that family, which would be the people of God, not because they were Jewish, but because they were uh, and so, yeah, you start studying this common law stuff, and you're like, you start studying these original state constitutions, y'all. These states got more information than the feds because that's where the real information is. I learned more stuff like today. I learned something about Mississippi, got all these ancient common law maxims and stuff like that. I'm like, they didn't tell us this stuff. So yeah, that's what yeah. So yeah. What else? Social Security. That's what I was gonna say. Um, let me see. Let me see. Here we go. Here we go. Let me read this. This is the Social Security number may only be mandated against those seeking benefits. Uh, they said in this case, who is this? This is Supreme Court. Supreme Court said the appellees raised a constitutional challenge to two features of the statutory scheme of the Social Security Act. They said they object to Congress because our cases have long recognized this distinction between the freedom of individual belief, which is absolute, and the freedom of individual conduct, which is not absolute. They said, never to our knowledge has the court interpreted the First Amendment to require the government itself to behave in ways that the individual believes will further his or her spiritual development or that of his or her family. The free exercise clause simply cannot be understood to require the government to conduct its own internal affairs in ways that comport with religious beliefs of particular citizens. That's not what I'm looking for. It says the free exercise clause affords an individual protection from certain forms of government compulsion. It does not afford an individual a right to conduct of government's internal procedures. Alabama says this perfectly. Here we go. Let's see, you got to go to the state. The feds, they're going to beat around the bush. You go to the Alabama, Alabama going to take it just like it is. Why? Because Alabama didn't like the feds for a little bit. Remember this thing called the Civil War? Okay, so all those cases right after the Civil War, nasty, nasty, nasty. They said, no, 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 we don't do that no citizen stuff, that U.S. citizen stuff. Watch this. Alabama, Alabama, Alabama. Yeah, Alabama don't play. They racist, but they don't play. They don't play with the feds. Let's see where we at. Common law, Alabama common law. Supreme Court of Alabama said the common law has inherited much from the Christian church. They said, in accordance with English common law, health care is not found in the United States Constitution. me be, in case you think I'm misinterpreting this. It says that according with the English common law, healthcare is not found in the enumerated powers given Congress in Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution, nor is such power to be found under a general welfare clause, as it was understood by our founding fathers. Where does it say that? Go to Alabama, search Alabama common law. So I do this thing where I ask y'all what state you come from, right? Then when we get to Alabama, we go straight here. Search Alabama common law on the Patreon. Law. Oh, there, so you child support people. Here you go. They Supreme Court of Alabama said, well, the common law rule is that parents have a paramount right to custody and care and nurture of their children, and that right includes the right to determine whom their children shall associate. They said Alabama is a common law state, and the common law of England shall be the rule of decision in all courts of this state. Alabama don't play. Well, they do, but they all playing now. Therefore, we continue to apply the common law. The authority of parents to direct the upbringing and children and training of their children is a principle of justice, so rooted in the traditions and conscience of our people, it is to be ranked as fundamental. They said that this thing called the common law, inherited from Britain and early American law derived from it, were rooted in Christian doctrine. They said Christianity is a part of the common law of this state. They said 3 times in the same case, right? So this is no BS. Alabama got a land patent case. I forgot about that. Let me see. They said a perfect title to constitute a perfect title must be a union of actual possession, the right of possession, the right of property, a complete title. And this is and according to the English, the ancient English law. What else? Somebody said California. Let me see if I can find this. The United States Supreme Court said that nobody has a person does not have a right to old age benefits under the Social Security Act. They say it again. They say it twice. They say we must conclude that a person covered by the act has not such a right in benefit. What are you paying for? Oh, don't. We're gonna get in trouble. Get in trouble. They steal it out your check. We don't. We don't. Nobody would want that. We want our gold and silver. What they say? The United States Supreme Court said. Oh, I'm gonna read it. It says a tax, as used in the Constitution, is an exaction for the support of the government. That word has never been expropriated to mean money from one group of people to the benefit of another. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. We're not supposed to be using that number for financial gain. Every time we do, innocent people end up in jails and prisons. Every time we use it. That's the thing they use to process people into jail and prison. That's the thing they use. That number is not American. Every every country on the planet, every major commercial country on the planet has a Social Security Administration. Join the Patreon. Join the Patreon. I need help creating books. Join the Patreon. So there's no such thing as a fair share. No, I don't. You come out there and swing hammers with us in the oil field, I'll give you some money. But until then, I don't have no fair share to give you. Nobody. Let's see. Where were we going? I forgot. We're going to talk about common law. Let's talk about common common law. Somebody said California. What else? What other states? What other states? Let's play. Let's play. What's the law of the state game? Um, Kentucky, California. Supreme Court of California said, based on Article 1 of the California Constitution, all men are by nature free and independent and have certain inalienable rights. Among those of enjoying defending life and property, acquiring possessions, protecting property, and pursuing and obtaining safety and happiness. This principle is as old as the Magna Carta. This is another good thing. When your state adopted the common law, so they don't tell you this, but this is why they can't change the common law. If they could, they would have gotten rid of it by now. Let me turn my heat back on. If they could have gotten rid of it, they hate that common law. They hate it. They hate it. They hate it. They hate it. Remember, they said it come from the scriptures, right? Uh, so yeah, you know they're not giving nobody a real trial by jury. And today they're not giving us no gold and silver. All that comes from the common law. The Supreme Court of South Carolina said that common law only gold and silver were considered money. Okay, well, why is that in the Constitution? Okay, because we're supposed to have gold and silver. So the Supreme Court of California said on April 13th, 1850, a statute adopts the rule of decisions in all courts of this state, the common law of England, not the civil law, nor the ancient common law of the civilians or Mexican law. Okay, well, what happened in California? California, before it joined the Union, whatever its legislator was, adopted it before California joined the Union. I don't know much about California. I'm not from the West Coast. I don't know. I don't know what was California before California joined the Union. But right before they joined the Union in April, I believe they joined the Union in, let's say, September. Okay. Well, all these states outside of the original 13 adopted the common law before they created, or before their state constitution created their governments. Okay. And because the legislator of California, as a result, the legislator of California cannot take away the common law. They don't have the authority to. They're not a creator, they are a creation. So when we think the state legislator is writing something, we don't know that they're supposed to be talking to themselves, and that they're not actually talking to us, because the purpose of a statute is, I have this. A statute is the bylaws of a corporation. So they're not talking to the people, but we believe they're talking to us. And when we get a state ID, it gets applied to us. Or when our property is in their system, it is applied to us. All right. So they said, so if I'm saying all this to say, if they wanted to get rid of that common law, they would have done it at the Civil War. They'd say, yeah, we don't do that no more. I mean, people tell me they don't. People say they go into court every day and they act like they never heard of the common law. I'm like, well, the Supreme Court of California said that's all they're supposed to be doing is the common law. See, California is significant, like Texas is significant, because they were never federal territories. So they're literally like the original 13. These other states, there's nothing wrong with this. But when they were federal territories, okay, well, Congress, the federal Congress controlled everything that happened. And then when they became a state, we are ignorantly under the assumption that, well, the federal government is in charge of Kentucky. No, Kentucky is sovereign. Matter of fact, let's go to Kentucky and I'll prove it. Somebody said, actually, let me read California. I didn't read it. So, what's the law of California? Oh, I did read it, kind of. They said the common law adopted in California in April 13th, 1850. Okay. And they said that this thing called the common law of England shall be the rule of decision in all courts of this state. The rule, not a rule, not kind of a rule. It is supposed to be the rule. They said not the civil law. See, other state governments can hide that because it's under the guise of federal territory. But California was never a federal territory. So when they went in balls out. You know what I mean? So, uh, and Texas did too. Texas did the same thing. So they say this expression, the common law of England, designates the English common law as interpreted as well in the English courts as in the courts of such of the states of the Union as have adopted the English common law. I'm not going to get into this, but the original 13 states adopted a lot of level of the common law. California did the exact same level of common law as the original 13 states, which is very significant. You wouldn't see it, you wouldn't believe me today because they don't do no common law like they're supposed to. But most of what I've learned concerning the law, I've learned from California Supreme Court cases, California legislation. It's even in their code. They say the common law of England it's in their code blatant. And the sovereignty and the people are so all that stuff is in California law. It's crazy. It's crazy how much. You want to learn the rules of evidence? Oh man, California's nasty, bro. Most of what I've learned is from California, and then I try to find what I find in California in other states. Are they ever enforced when they don't do common law? Well, the answer is no because it, again, I get in trouble, but it's our fault and it's their fault, right? Because we didn't know this. Our parents, it's really our grandparents' fault. I don't want to blame us. We didn't have nothing to do with that. We weren't there, right? But grandma and great grandma and grandpa and great grandpa, they dropped the ball. Black people and white people, they dropped the ball for real, right? Because they had all of it, y'all. They had it. They had the freest country ever. I need y'all to understand this. The world hates us, and they can't wait till we're all broke. And they're going to send in international troops to give us some assistance. I'm telling you, that's what's going to happen. They hate us. The world hates. You ever traveled out the country? Boy, don't go to Europe. They hate us. Go to Miami. Go to Miami and find all the European people there. They hate Americans. Hate them. They hate us, y'all. Black people and white people. They hate all of us, bro. Kentucky. So yeah, what's the law of California? The common law. Kentucky. So we're supposed to be enforcing common law. We're supposed to be controlling the sheriff. See, this book is on federal jurisdiction. You'll see all these cases where they say, like, I made this video about Hawaii. Okay, well, when Hawaii went from a territory to a state, okay, well, the federal legislation had to strike out all of Hawaii from all their federal legislation, right? So even in some state codes today, they'll give you a definition of a state and they'll have Puerto Rico on there. Okay, well, if Puerto Rico ever joins the union, then they're gonna have to remove Puerto Rico from there's no federal statutes that talk to a state, y'all. There's none. Unless it has to do with like a national park or a mountain or a river or something like that. But as far as like the land of people, no, there's not one statute that talks from the federal government to the people. California is the best. I'm gonna go to Kentucky, I promise. But watch this. California is nasty. I told you I learned everything from California. The first time I heard about land patents was California. Yeah, they said they controlled, not when I say I control, not hostily. I don't want the Fed showing up in my house. Not yet, at least. But they say they control the county recorder's office. So they're getting land patents because they got an office where they got like they homeboys working in there. They say, yeah, what date you looking for? Yeah, we don't have that in no other state. Uh, California, California, California. Boom, here we go. They said this thing called the United States and California are two separate sovereignties. They said that after the Civil War, after the Federal Reserve, they said all of that. Somebody's jamming downstairs. Yeah, Michael Jackson. Kentucky, 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 Kentucky. I just found something on Kentucky the other day. Let's see what we got. Common law, baby. Common law. What's the law of Kentucky? Kentucky courts announced that only such rules of the common law enforced prior to the year 1607 are adopted by this state, and that no rule of the common law not then recognized and enforced in England should be recognized and enforced there. Uh, they said a conspiracy to falsely indict a man for murder would be a conspiracy in common law. You couldn't just accuse somebody with no party, y'all. They used to just falsely, they said, no, we can't. Kentucky came from Virginia, right? So, okay. They said by an ordinance of 1776 in Virginia, they adopted the common law of England and all such. So, why did Kentucky say that only such rules of the common law enforced prior to 1607? Okay, they were part of Virginia, so they said, well, we'll just take what Virginia had. So they said, well, we'll take everything from 1607 and on back. So they got all of that. Where was I? So yeah, they said Virginia adopted the common law of England and all statutes and acts of parliament made in aid of the common law prior to the fourth year of James I. The eighth section of the sixth article of the Constitution of Kentucky adopted with the qualifications that all laws, which on the 1st of June 1792 were enforced in Virginia. Ooh, here we go. Here we go. Mortgage. What's a mortgage? I have this. I have this in the book. I'm not gonna find it. Oh, I can find it. I got the digital version. Let me pull up the digital version. And I'm already the physical version. Like I can't see it on the computer screen, so that you buy the book. What you're not gonna do. All right. Mort, Maine. What's a Mort, Maine, y'all? What's a Mort, Maine? Oh, it's under the. Oh, I got it twice. A license, an ecclesiastical license. That's where the word mortgage comes from. There we go. Let's see what we got. What page is that? Page 99. What's a license? No, this is about equity. Sure is. Mort, Maine is an ecclesiastical issue under the courts of equity under the direction of the clergy. Okay. They said to account to his sesquiu use for rents and emoluments of the estate. It is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. Okay, well, Virginia or Kentucky said, yeah, we don't do that here. If the Mortmain Acts of England prior to the 4th year of January were all local to that kingdom, no part of them was ever enforced in Virginia and Kentucky. Them boys didn't play back in the day, y'all. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. They say, yeah, we don't do that stuff here. And I got another thing. So all these scammers on the internet keep talking about ecclesiastical canon law. Okay, well, none of that is constitution. And they got this in their books. They say, okay, well, they adopted all of this common law. Well, technically, ecclesiastical law was a part of it. Okay, well, they got a section that say Well, no, they didn't adopt that part because it wasn't technically of England. It was from Rome. Um, so yeah, they said these mortmain acts of England, right? 'Cause that's what these attorneys do. These attorneys will say, "Oh well, yeah, they got all the common law of England, all the statutes, all the no, not all the statutes, that not the ones that benefit a fictitious corporation, the ones that benefit the people." Right? That's why I tell y'all about William the Conqueror. Everything after William the Conqueror is not the common law. It's got some of it in there, but that's when paperwork and all that fake stuff started being introduced. All right, but prior to William the Conqueror is the ancient common law. It is the legal definition of the common law. It's the ancient unwritten principles. It's the usages and customs, particularly the ancient unwritten principles of the laws of England, the unwritten laws of England. So, okay, so you study that. Okay, you got to start with a dude named Donwallo Momushus from 510 BC. He said, yeah, yeah, yeah. And when he was the king of ancient Britain, they had this thing called the right to travel, and that you had the right to defend yourself from anybody who was trying to steal from you, and you had the right to get rid of them, if you know what I mean, right? And then what else they had? They said, yeah, they had the right to travel, they had the right to defend themselves. Um, they had some type of religious freedom thing. All of that stuff, they said they got that from the first five books of the Bible in 510 BC. And then you got to start with these people called the Druids from 100 to 300 AD after the resurrection. And then in the 300s, sometime between the mid 200s and 300s, you got these people called the Angles and the Saxons. They showed up, they took over, and they I don't know how to say it, exemplified all of these ancient principles. And that body of history is what they call the common law of England. So that's where I say you get the trial by jury, you get the grand jury, you get the principles of gold and silver, you get all of these. A breach of the peace is the only crime that you could be arrested for. Right? You get what a real felony is. A felony is when you steal or damage somebody's property up into a certain amount. Right? So all of these things would be the ancient common law. All this stuff is in the Constitution too. This is hilarious. Not the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. Right, so you got preamble, uh, everything in Article 1 is based on the common law. Everything in, let's say it's a brief common law procedure. Okay, the executive branch, the state militia. Okay, well, that comes from the common law of England. They say every man at the age of 15 had to have that thing on you. You had to stay strapped. It was against the law not to be strapped. At 15, they said you had to keep that thing on you or you was going to be in trouble. And they said even in ancient England, okay, well, the British Navy and the British military, that was different from the counties and the shires and all that stuff in England. So they said this thing called the United States Army, well, they're not technically allowed in the states. They're not allowed in the counties and the shires. They said, okay, you want to give us a little corporate entity, we'll take this dude, the shire, the reef, okay, and he'll be on behalf of the king. If he got any corporate business, you'll go through him if you want to come deal with us. And they said, okay, well then that was a contract that was established. That all of that is it's in this book, commercial law. Let's see. Dang it. Yep. All right. And after 1066, this dude named William the Conqueror. Uh, so before there were counties and before there were shires, they were called the hundreds. They were just called the hundreds or the tithings. They would just been like 10 families. Okay. Well, if you got so big, the king would send a shire reeve to keep the peace and all that stuff. All right. So again, they couldn't put hands on you or put handcuffs on you unless there was a breach of the peace. Okay. Well, in the United States Constitution, that's a breach of the peace. And I read this all the time. All right. Well, this is in Article 1. They say, well, no senator and representative shall receive yada 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 shall be exempt from arrest except for treason, felony, and the breach of the peace. Well, they couldn't arrest nobody at common law except for treason. Well, not treason, that would have been different, but for felony or a breach of the peace. Treason was technically only reserved for, not that you couldn't be a traitor, but it was only reserved for like government employees, right? But the felony and a breach of a peace, well, nobody could be arrested for that, especially in the original 13 states and after the Constitution. So a breach of the peace always means violence. A felony only meant if you stole something or you damaged somebody else's property. Right? All of those require an injured party. And then you find all these cases at common law, no constable, no sheriff, no peace officer could arrest anybody. It would be unlawful to arrest somebody without a warrant. If you didn't have a warrant, which only came by commercial contract, then there was no way to arrest you unless there was an actual injured party. All right. King Henry II, yada, 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 were to call upon the knights of the shire and the men of the hundred to give answers. So he would call the people of the county, what was then known as the hundreds, and the knights of that area. And then because the people of the county kept evading, they said, no, we don't want to deal with all that, which is rightfully so. And then they said, through all these issues, a contract was established. And then that's how they got this thing we now know as a sheriff to be the chief officer of a county. That's what a sheriff is. So back then it would have been the reef of the shire, the chief executive officer. Oh, they said it was the governor of the county or shire. Right. Well, now he's the chief corporate officer of the county. And the law has not changed. You're not supposed to be putting handcuffs on people or towing and taking their stuff. All of this is in the Magna Carta too, unless you had a warrant, which is a commercial contract, state ID, and uh, or unless there was a breach of a peace or a felony. That's the only way you could put somebody in handcuffs. Okay, well, after the Civil War, they said, yeah, we don't do that no more. Come get these state IDs. Come get these state IDs. Yeah, we got this thing called a driver's license now. Yeah, come get that. The Amish people said, no, we don't. We remember that. No, no, no. That's why them Amish people on horse and buggies today, ain't they? All right, I forgot what I was reading. Kentucky. Kentucky said, this is the same case. They say it 3 times, 4 times. Yeah, this thing called the common law shall be the rule of decision in all courts of the state. They talking about 1603, March 24th. They said, yeah, we use all them statutes. Yeah, that's all us. All right, this is not what I wanted to read, though. Kentucky. I got a law book on common law in Kentucky. I forgot about that. Yeah, it's called the Common Law Enforced in Kentucky. I be forgetting I got stuff. All right, but that's not what I wanted. Sovereignty. Kentucky sovereignty. There we go. Kentucky is a boss. All right. They said on February 4th, 1791, a new state be formed within the jurisdiction of the Commonwealth of Virginia and admitted into the Union called Kentucky. They said this thing was chosen by the people of Kentucky, and they are received into the Union. And they said that they are separate and independent from the Commonwealth of Virginia. All right. They said, now who is this? This is a federal legislator, not the federal legislator, the Kentucky legislator. They said the rights of Kentucky citizens, like that, and the sovereignty of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. They said the Commonwealth of Kentucky affirms its sovereign right to nullify unconstitutional acts of the federal government, including but not limited to rulemaking, monitoring, and enforcement by federal agencies or unelected boards or executive orders from the President of the United States. No, but I thought the feds told the states what they. Oh, orders or decisions of the federal courts. Come on now. Or making or enforcing of treaties. Repeat the sheriff and his duties. Uh, well, the sheriff was the governor and uh, he was the governor and chief executive corporate officer of a county. So he only dealt with corporate things. He wasn't supposed to be dealing with the people. His only job was to keep the peace. That's really it. Like everything else would have pertained to. Technically, he is the only one that's supposed to be collecting taxes if there were taxes to be paid. If there were lawful taxes to be paid, and they say this stuff today. I got stuff on this. They say, well, technically, if these feds didn't go through the sheriff, then it wasn't lawful. That's a violation of due process. It's also a violation of state sovereignty, which is under the separation of powers. So there's two separations of powers, right? You got your legislative, executive, judicial branch. Those are a separation of powers. And then you have the state and federal. That is a separation of powers, right? So they said, yada, 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 when creating a federal government through the ratification of the United, this is Kentucky talking, y'all. When creating a federal government through the ratification of the United States Constitution, the sovereign states, which are superior in the federal government, which is inferior, the citizens of the Commonwealth do not consent to any action by the executive or judicial branch that purports to enact law or cede authority or sovereignty to any global organization of which the United States is a member. No, I thought Kentucky was one of the. Kentucky said, we don't know them like that. They said, we appreciate it, Virginia. Thanks for everything. We'll take it from here. They said, Ohio, we appreciate it. Thanks for everything. Yeah. I don't know what's on the other side of Kentucky, but you got Ohio and what's is it South Dakota? What's on the other side of Kentucky? Yeah, you can tell I'm not from up there. I don't know nothing about Kentucky. Like people don't realize how big the states are. Indiana, that's Tennessee. No, Missouri. Oh well, Indiana's above Kentucky. Ohio's above Kentucky. Kentucky big. West Virginia connects to Kentucky. I didn't realize that either. You got Illinois. It touched Kentucky, and Missouri touches Kentucky. You got Tennessee. Dang, Kentucky. I see. I see it. It's a lot. Kentucky surrounded by everybody. But yeah, Kentucky said, well, we don't have to do what other. They said what they say. We do not consent to any action of which this thing called the United States. And they said we know there's a difference between what the United States really is. It's a corporation. They know. They said the General Assembly of Kentucky reaffirms Kentucky's sovereignty, the sovereign right of Kentucky to nullify unconstitutional acts of the federal government. They said they can challenge all unconstitutional acts of the federal government or members of agencies, unelected boards which usurp or diminish the sovereignty of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Protecting state sovereignty. They said that in 2024. You know where they got that from? See, if you're from Kentucky, you need to know all this. This is nasty. All right. In 1798, Kentucky was beefing with Thomas Jefferson, okay? Because they just got this thing called the United States Constitution. And Kentucky said, well, now hold on. We don't, what's this United States Constitution thing? What do you mean? You're setting up a federal corporation? What is this? They said, do we have to obey these laws? They were Thomas Jefferson. They wrote him. And Thomas Jefferson said, no, you do not have to obey federal law. And he said, and I'm going to read it. This is called the Kentucky Resolve. If you're from Kentucky, you need to know this like the back of your hand. It's called the Kentucky Resolves. If you can get a copy of it from the Kentucky government, try to do so. It's I don't know how many pages it is. I got the digital version, but I'll get the actual, not the actual, you can't get it. You know what I mean? Get a physical copy of it if it's on eBay, whatever. The Kentucky Resolves, the S. All right. So in 1798, Thomas Jefferson wrote Kentucky and said, okay, in cases of abuse of delegated power, the general government being chosen by the people, a change by the people would be a constitutional remedy. They said where powers are assumed which have not been delegated, a nullification of the act is the rightful remedy. Every state has a natural right to nullify of their own authority all assumptions of power by others within their limits. Without this right, they would be under the dominion, absolute and unlimited, of whomsoever might exercise this right of judgment for them. Say black robes, the guys in black robes. Thomas Jefferson said the states, they alone are parties to the compact. Remember, we got to understand this. The Constitution does nothing but create a government. What did it do? It created the federal legislative branch. It created an executive branch. It created a judicial branch. And that Constitution told them what they could and could not do through that Constitution. Your state constitution as well. And so Thomas Jefferson said, well, the states are the parties to the compact. They got new cases that say, "Oh, well, technically, y'all not parties to the compact." No, yeah, we are. The people created that. People of the states created that federal constitution. They said these states alone are parties to the compact, and they're solely authorized to judge in the last resort of the powers exercised under it. Congress being not a party. Now he don't say it, but the executive branch is not a party, and the judicial branch is not a party, because that document was set up to protect the states. So Thomas Jefferson said, "Okay, well, you guys alone are a party to the contract. So if there's any unlawful, unconstitutional things, by the time it get to the jury, y'all need to go ahead and get rid of it." I said, "No, we're not going to do that here. Thanks." Yeah, case dismissed. Yeah, we don't do that federal taxation thing. No thanks. They said they be alone parties to the compact. They're solely authorized to judge in the last resort of the powers exercised under it. Congress is not a party. They are merely creatures of the compact. So what did the compact called the United States Constitution do? It created a government. So the government can't then go around and say, "Oh, well, now we create." Oh, you're not the party to the contract. We tell you what to do. So Thomas Jefferson said, I can't find it today, but I read this thing that said Thomas Jefferson didn't write the Constitution. And now I kind of get why. They said the several states composing the United States of America are not united on the principle of unlimited submission to the general government. They constituted a general government for special purposes, and they were delegated with certain powers. reserving each state to itself the residuary mass of right to their own self government. They said it, well, he said, whensoever the general government assumes undelegated power, its acts are unauthoritative, void, and of no force. Look, Thomas said, my boy TJ said, the government created by this compact was not made the exclusive or final judge. They said each party, what's that? Each state has a right, has an equal right to judge for itself. That's some nasty stuff, boys. It's the institutions, internal regulations, and the Constitution formats how to stay away from. Well, that's a whole lecture by itself. But you gotta the same way returning to your roots. Okay, you gotta learn how to live life the same way them Amish people learn how to live life outside of these tentacles called electricity. So for those of us in the South, you know, we just went through some crazy weather. Okay, well, if you couldn't have made it without electricity in those times in this weather, you gotta learn. You gotta learn. We gotta come together. We gotta start being humble. We got to start putting money together and buying land and learning how to build log cabins and start fires and hunting. See, returning to our roots is not fake paperwork. We got to learn how to eat. We got to learn how to keep a cabin warm. It ain't no electricity. The Amish people ain't crazy. They look crazy because we are blinded by commercialism. I tell y'all all the time that TV show, what's it called, 1923 or 1913, where they introduce on this TV show uh, the washer machine and the refrigerator. They said, yeah, everybody doing it in New York. They're like in Montana or whatever. They said, well, they got this thing called a refrigerator in, I think they were in Montana. They said they got this thing called a refrigerator in New York. They got this thing called a washer machine. Wouldn't you ladies like to stop having doing little washer machine stuff? For washing clothes without a washer machine. That dude, the father of the family or the husband or whatever it was. I've never watched the show. I only watched that episode. I didn't watch the episode. I only watched that clip. That dude said, "Well, if all of this stuff, the washing machine, the refrigerator requires electricity, I have to pay for all of that stuff. Then I have to pay for your electricity." He said, "I'm no longer working for myself. I'm working for you now." And then they like cut to the next scene, and that was it. He said, "Well, everybody's doing it in New York." Right, but we're not New York, they Montana. You know what I mean? If you want to participate, sure, go ahead and participate, but it ain't what you think it is. I can't believe they put that in a movie or a TV show. I'd have never told people that. They be putting this stuff right in our face. Yeah, they gonna love this. Introduce a washing machine. Yeah, that thing. I'm not gonna say it, but all of this convenience is what's getting us. I remember when I was a truck driver, uh, all of these truck drivers like, well, yeah, we're gonna boycott because we're not being paid enough. I'm like, y'all don't have no money to last 3 months. Talking about y'all gonna boycott. You're not gonna boycott nothing. Because somebody's willing to accept lower wages to pay their bills. And so you can think you can boycott all you want, but somebody's gonna come in and accept lower pay. And that's what's happening. So the system's gonna crash regardless. So we gotta be humble, start coming together, putting our money together, buying land, getting these land patents for real, and then we got to influence an entire county. We got to start having barbecues every weekend where they eat for free. Exactly what Jesus did. We're gonna feed 5,000 and tell them the truth about a trial by jury and a grand jury. And if you're ever called to be on one, you don't convict nobody where there's no injured party. And then you pressure the sheriff and say, hey, no feds. It's your responsibility to keep them out of here. Now we'll ride with you if you uphold who we elected to do a constitutional job. See, but we don't have one county that does that. You know what I mean? So we gotta. I'm don't have to be the bad guy, but somebody got to do it. I keep waiting on somebody else to start it. I don't think. Maybe I got to be the what they call it, the scapegoat or whatever. Um, how do you buy land? Gold and silver. That deed's got to say gold and silver on it. I forgot what county I was in Ohio. I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying we don't have it on a national level. We don't have it on a state level. But if they got them, awesome. I want my own constitutional sheriff. I ain't seen one yet. I'm sure they out there. What was the dude? I just learned of a dude. He's on my YouTube channel. Uh, I got this thing on the YouTube channel where I can share videos of stuff that I find. He was in Nevada. What's his name? He's passed away, of course. Everybody we'd be trying to find. Oh man, I wonder if this dude. Nope, passed away 6 years ago. His name is Tony DeMeo. He's actually from New Jersey, but he like accepted a sheriff position out in Nevada. He's got 3 videos where he explains how he is the authority of the county and he kept the feds from taking somebody's property. Like the 1933 Gold and Silver Act. No, like the 1787 United States Constitution. It says that no threat can be paid but with gold and silver. Yeah, his name is Tony DeMay. Oh, he's passed away. But he's got 3 videos. Somebody interviewed him and he explained his authority and how he kept the feds from taking somebody's property. But yeah, that's Kentucky. The Kentucky resolves. But yeah, we gotta come together, y'all. We gotta come together. What other states? What other states? Virginia. What I got on Virginia? I just found something. Virginia, Virginia. Who is the sovereign of Virginia? Oh, this is nasty. I just found this. Oh, they redacted the case, y'all. I found this case, but the heading of it is redacted. They got black bars all over it. They said, "No, you can't read this." So I found it somewhere else where the case was, and uh, and they say, here we go, state sovereignty. They said the state is a sovereign because the reason I keep talking about this sovereignty thing, it's not about sovereign citizens. That's not what I'm talking about. They don't want to acknowledge anymore that the states are sovereign. Like these attorneys will look you dead in your face and say that the states are not sovereign and that the federal government, they say, oh, well, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and that means that all federal law just gets to tell the states what to do. That's never been true, ever, ever, ever. These attorneys will look you dead in your face and lie. And if you don't know how to prove them wrong, they get away with it. All right? That's why I keep this book on me. I promise you that's why I keep this book on me. Because they lie every day. Oh, a ninja crime don't require a ninja party. It do where I'm at. It do here, it do. You're not gonna get off. Not in front of me. You're not gonna lie. I keep this thing on me. Uh, but this Virginia case, they said, uh, The state is a sovereign entity. The people collectively in their sovereign capacity are the state. This is called the discernment of the vigil or understanding the courts. The camera's backwards, so I can't. Uh, uh, I can't. It doesn't. I don't know how to. But this is only on constitutionacademy.org. Don't try to Google it. It's not on Google. It's not on Amazon. constitutionacademy.org. Constitution Academy. Uh, .org. Oh, it's not on there. You got to go to constitutionacademy.org. This is for the physical books. The digital book you can get on Patreon. Um, but the physical, I don't know how to. The issue with Patreon is like if you guys use Apple or an iPhone to pay, I don't get that money immediately. It's some y'all make payments. Some people who pay every month, I don't see that money until months later because Apple said they don't release the funds until months afterwards. So I can't accept the payment for a physical book because I use that money. I barely get anything from it. I use that book to pay for the book to be printed and shipped. So I have to use a separate website until I figure out how to do both. Um, but yeah, so that book is only at constitutionacademy.org. Then that money comes immediately. Then I use that money to order the physical book because I don't have a printer here, obviously. So it gets printed somewhere and it gets shipped from that place to y'all. So it takes about 2 weeks. So a week to print and a week to ship. But they say, yeah, this thing called Virginia is a sovereign entity. The people collectively in their sovereign capacity are the state. Okay, well, they want you to believe the state is a corporation, and many scammers and feds on the internet be saying, uh, put in the chat the case in Tommy. What's his name? I have no clue what you're talking about, man. And I don't put cases on in the chat. If you want to see everything that I'm reading, it's on the Patreon. The link. Actually, it's probably not in the bio because I got the book link in the bio right now. Unless you're not talking to me. You're probably talking to somebody else in the chat. Sorry. All right. Considering the state as a sovereign entity, the people collectively in their sovereign capacity are the state. Who is the state? That's y'all. Who is Kentucky? Who is Virginia? Who is California? If you were born there, that's your nationality. You don't get to pick where you're born, right? If you were born in China, you were Chinese, bro. I'm sorry, ain't no way to. I tell people this all the time. If you were born in New Mexico's the only place you can be completely white or completely black and not know a lick of Spanish and be considered New Mexican because it's a nation. Virginia is a nation. You don't have a choice about it. It's just where you were born. Whoever's military was there, that's. I mean. Oh, the sheriff. The sheriff is named Tony DeMayo. DeMayo. Tony, not Tommy. Tony. He didn't say the case. He just explained his authority to keep a family from having their property taken by the federal government. And they said when it and the others of the original 13 state acquired their independence, each acquired not only the powers, prerogatives, and rights of the British Crown, but also all the powers and rights held by the people collectively in their capacity as sovereign. They said when Virginia acquired its independence, it acquired full and complete sovereignty, and therewith the full and complete dominion for governmental purposes over all the land. So who told the feds they had authority there? That's why they redacted it. They said full, complete sovereignty, full and complete dominion. So what they mean you owe, and I don't have time to prove this, but all these taxes from property to income, it's all federal. I told you we don't have no state governments no more, so it's all federal. It say it in the codes. I got it. They say, never mind. I'm not gonna get in that much trouble. I done said it too much, but uh, they said okay, well, full complete sovereignty. Full. I'm talking about this is after the United States Constitution. You understand that? Because they want to say, oh, well, yeah, that's how they were before. No, 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 no. This is after the Constitution. This is after the federal Constitution. Anything after the federal Constitution is fair game. So they're not making up some stuff that only applied to Virginia because before the United, no, 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 no. They talk after the United States Constitution, full and complete sovereignty, full and complete dominion for governmental purposes over all lands and waters within its territorial district. uh, and it is the complete proprietary. That I got a book. It's in the homework section of Patreon. They said you're supposed to write your state's land commission. This dude wrote the California Land Commission and asked him where he worked, where he lived, had that piece of land been ceded to the United States federal government. And they wrote him back and said that these parcels of land are not federally owned by the United States and does not have any legislative jurisdiction. They said the United States does not have a real property interest. The California cannot and has not ceded legislative jurisdiction to the United States. Remember, I read that case. They said the United States and California, two separate sovereignties. So you get to this thing called Virginia. Go back to it. And they got all this stuff redacted that say, yeah, Virginia own all day land. It ain't no such thing as the feds own nothing. Their job is to hold public land until the people claim it. But they don't get to tell people what they can and can't do with it as long as they don't create an intra party. So they said there is nothing primitive about a state constitution. It is based upon the pre-existing laws, rights, habits, and modes of thought of the people who ordained it. And the fundamental theory of sovereignty and of government, which has been developed under the common law and must be construed in light of this fact. They don't ever talk about state constitutions, y'all. They talk about it amongst themselves, but they don't be talking about no state constitution, and that's where the authority of the state sovereignty comes from. And that it came under the is developed under the common law. They don't ever talk about that common law. They said, don't tell them about that. Because they got this thing called the right to revolt in the common law. Yeah, they said, oh, don't tell them about that. They said constitutional law, the construction of the Constitution for purposes for which it was ordained. The Constitution must be construed in light of the purposes it was ordained. They said it would be a perversion of the Virginia Constitution to construe it as authorizing or permitting the legislator or any other governmental agency to relinquish, alienate, or destroy or substantially impair the sovereignty or the sovereign rights or governmental powers of the state. This stuff is nasty, bro. They redacted all of this, bro. You download the case, it's black bar, black bar, black bar, black bar, black bar for like 5 or 6 pages. I said, yeah, don't worry about that. Yeah, don't look at that. Don't find the real case. And then the little part they get, yeah, the people are in their sovereign capacity. I said, that's nasty. Um, yeah, what other states? Virginia common law. Oh yeah, what's the law of Virginia? The common law of England, as so far as it's not repugnant to the bills of rights and constitution of this commonwealth. They said we're not talking about the United States Constitution. Not, that ain't got nothing to do with us. Shall continue in full force within the same and shall be the rule of decision in Virginia. I mean, Virginia, I mean, you got to know Virginia's that. They the first ones on the scene. Oh, my phone's getting too hot. Oh, no, it's getting cold outside. It's about to be in the 20s. What's the temperature where y'all at? What's the temperature? All right. Yeah, they said this thing called the common law of England shall be in full force and be the decision. They said oh, that was the second case. They said that y'all. They said this guy named William Blackstone were accepted by the founders as the most satisfactory exposition of the common law of England. You want to learn the common law of England? They said start with William Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England. 52 degrees in Florida. Hey, where are y'all in Florida? It's three of y'all in Florida. All right, don't tell nobody this. Zero. Where is zero at? What state are you in? You're in North Dakota, ain't you? Massachusetts. Yep, that's the coldest place I've ever been in my entire life. Was it last year? Yeah, it was last year. I was in Boston, in the Boston Harbor. Like, I didn't know nothing about Boston. I went there. I went to like the Massachusetts Supreme Court. All that. I tried to make a video, a YouTube video outside of the Supreme Court of Massachusetts. It was so cold, I could not move my lips. I couldn't move my lips. I was like, nope, I'm going back to the hotel. I stayed in that hotel for 2 days straight. And my what sucked is my hotel was on the water. Yeah, it's the wind. It is. My hotel was on the water because I didn't know where the Boston was. So I'm like, yeah, just don't see the water. The huge mistake. It was literally in it was literally this time. I think it was in February of last year. I was like, I've made an enormous mistake. And everybody I met was like, yeah, you should have came in the summer. Summer's the best time to be here. I'm like, well, I'm never coming up here again. This is my only time. Like, so yeah, Massachusetts. Virginia said, if you want to learn the common law of England, start with William Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England. They were accepted by the founders of the Constitution as the most satisfactory exposition of the common law. Yeah, I'm talking about. I've been in North Dakota, and it was the water though. That's why I think it was. I think because I worked on the other side of Massachusetts that year, and it wasn't that cold. It really wasn't cold at all. Like that. But on the coast, on the East Coast, I'm like, this is ridiculous. There's no way people live here, but people live there. There he is. uh, but yeah, they said the English common law was incorporated into our body of law at the time of 1776 in the Constitutional Convention. Look, they said in this case, this Virginia, this is in 2023. I forgot that. That's the Supreme Court of Virginia in 2023. They say if you want to learn about riotous assemblies, poaching, anonymous threats, damage or destruction of property, public brawling. They said we got all that. They said Blackstone's commentaries offer guidance in defining common law terms that the majority does not. Oh, I didn't see. I need to read. They said, according to Blackstone, 13 offenses constitute a violation against public peace. Spreading false prophecies. Oh, forcible entry and detainer. You do that every day. Incitements of the breach of the peace. There we go. Provoke public disorder, carrying dangerous weapons. That was different than a rifle and a handgun. Uh, Unlawful assemblings, riots, public brawling. There we go. So yeah, Virginia. All right. Somebody said Massachusetts. Let's go to Massachusetts real quick. Florida. I'm moving to Florida, y'all. I didn't tell y'all that, but I'm moving. I'm moving to Florida. Like I paid first month's rent today. Where are we going? Massachusetts. Duval. No, I'm not moving to Duval. I'll be in the Panhandle. Are you in Florida too? Is that 4 people in Florida? Who's all in Florida? Massachusetts common law. I just found this case. It said the Supreme Court of Massachusetts said the common law of England our ancestors brought with them, and it may be considered the body of the common law of Massachusetts. Uh, they said, who is this? The Supreme Court of Massachusetts said the English statutes which were in force at the time of the immigration of our ancestors from that country are the common law here. The statutes of Edward III have been adopted in practice here. I didn't finish talking about this. I'm sorry, y'all. All right. The Deuteronomy and the common law. All right. Deuteronomy is an explanation of the Ten Commandments, right? Okay. Well, remember, everything before William the Conqueror is the unwritten law, the lex non scriptus, somebody said in the comments. Okay. This dude, I don't know what time period he was in. He was before William the Conqueror, but his name was King Alfred. King Alfred created a book called the Doom Book. It's spelled Dome. We can't read it. It's not translatable. Well, it's probably translatable. You won't be able to read the original version, but this thing called the Doom Book in I don't know what year it is, but that book, this dude is the king of England. He compiled all the laws of that day, and it was literally just an explanation of the Ten Commandments. That was it. That was the common law of England during his day, and that it was called the Doom Book. Dome. So this dude named King Alfred in ancient England compiled this thing called the Doom Book, and it's the Ten Commandments. They literally you try to read the translations, and they give a commentary on it. They say, "Oh yeah, all of these things are from the Decalogue." I said, "The Decalogue, the Ten Commandments." They say that these people called the Anglos and the Saxons, well, their influence went from 300 AD all the way to 1200 AD. So literally up until the Magna Carta. After that, it would have been Roman influence. But from 300 AD, so 100 to 200, you got these people called the Druids or whatever. And then from 300 to 1200, all these ancient common law principles are brought by these people called the Anglos and the Saxons. These people called the Anglos and the Saxons said that they could trace their history all the way back to the people of Moses. They could trace their ancestry all the way back to the people of Moses. And another fun fact is that there were white people and black people in ancient England who were the Anglos and the Saxons. Got books on it. I said, yeah, these people were also the Anglos and the Saxons. They had this name, black man this, black man that. They were in all the charters and all the. I said, what? They said, yep, they was both there. So they lied about all our history, y'all. I just want to give y'all. They say it's not a Christian nation and all this stuff. They lied. They all lied. So the Supreme Court of Tennessee, the Supreme Court of Florida said, yeah, our Anglo-American legal tradition is called the common law, and it comes from a Christian thing. Supreme Court of Tennessee said, yeah, the common law comes from the scriptures. And then you start studying these ancient common law principles, and they say they go all the way back to the Bible. So, yeah, this thing called the Constitution is based on this thing called Deuteronomy. Yep. You got all these old charters too. You go look up all these charters. Massachusetts charter. What is it? I look it up all the time. Somebody says Avalon. Avalon is like Yale. Yale, Avalon. Yale, Avalon. I don't know how to spell Avalon. Avalon Project. Okay, Yale Avalon Project. You get to see all the documents that they in the 1600s. Okay. Yep, the Charter of Maryland. No, 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 no. They had an Articles of Confederation in the 1600s. Watch this. They said the reason we came to this land is to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. No lie before God. Yale Avalon Articles of Confederation 1632, I think. Yeah. The Articles of Confederation of the United Colonies of England, May 19th, 1643. They said this is the preamble of this Articles of Confederation. Let me read the whole thing. They said the Articles of Confederation between the plantations under the government of Massachusetts, New Plymouth, Connecticut, New Haven. I don't know what y'all would know up there. They said where we all came to these parts of America with one and the same end and aim, namely to advance the kingdom of our Lord Jesus Christ and to enjoy the liberties of the gospel in purity and peace. The end. I mean, it's a whole thing here, but that's what they said. So they already had an Articles of Confederation before we got Articles of Confederation. They don't ever talk about that one, do they? No, no. Oh, that was when they were under England. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You go to these Supreme Court cases, you'll find all that stuff. Yeah, based on the Articles of Confederation of the Charter of New England. Yeah, that's about all this stuff. Like it's still valid. This stuff is nasty. Yeah, so the Supreme Court of Massachusetts said that the common law of England, our ancestors brought with them, and it is the body of common law of Massachusetts. The English statutes, which were in force at the time of the immigration of our ancestors from that country, are the common law here. The statutes of Edward III have been adopted and practiced upon you, therefore, to be considered as part of our common law. After the federal constitution, y'all, they said the term common law in English statute has been made an amendment of the common law of England. It is here to be considered our common law. So if you 100 years from now you find this thing called the common law of Massachusetts, they're gonna say, okay, you're gonna look into it. They're gonna say, oh well, all of these things came from England. Because to technically There's been no new Massachusetts. That just had changes in government. So whenever Massachusetts got here, let's assume 1643. Okay, well technically that's the same Massachusetts. All they did was just break off from Great Britain. They said we never planned on getting rid of this common law thing. That's the thing we wanted. That's the thing they weren't obeying. They weren't giving us a trial by jury. You go to the Declaration of Independence, they say, okay, well, the government wasn't obeying the law. We didn't have a problem with the law. They said King George has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for good. They say, what did he say? Thomas Jefferson said, second time, refused his assent to laws, made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and control the payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out our substance. He is kept among us in times of peace, standing with the consent of our legislator. California, Venezuela, Iran next. He said he is affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. Do that every day. He is combined with others, somebody else, to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution. What was their Constitution? The Magna Carta. So we didn't plan on getting rid of the Magna Carta. You guys are insane. What are you talking about? Call an attorney. They'll say, oh, they don't do that common law stuff no more. That's because you've invaded our country. That's why. They never planned on getting rid of that common law, y'all. That's the reason they fought. They said in 1643, we came here to advance the kingdom of our Lord Jesus Christ. They got some pretty cool guys. Yeah, this common law thing comes from the Bible, it comes from the scriptures, it comes from Christianity. Okay, well, you don't get on the other side of that, and they don't do it no more. No, you don't do it no more. He is combined with others to subject us to jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our law. What was their laws? They said we didn't have a problem with laws, y'all. They said we like laws. We have no beef with this thing called laws. They said we not the one not obeying the law. They said they introducing something calling it law, and it's not the law. They said this is foreign to our Magna Carta. This is foreign to the laws of England. I said this ain't England talking to us, talking about we magically owe you money and we gotta pay it, or you'll bring us before a guy in a black robe instead of a trial by jury. They said, no, that ain't the laws of England. They said this thing is foreign to our Constitution, unacknowledged by our laws. And they said a third time, he has given his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. They said fake laws. He said he keeps assenting to these. He refuses to obey our law, and he keep believing these fake laws. He keep enforcing these fake laws. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, every police department in this country, for protecting them by a mock trial for punishments for any murders that they should commit in Minnesota on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, robbing us of the benefits of a trial by jury. Okay, that's the common law. If you had to put the common law down in two things, it's due process, trial by jury in all cases. Here you go, fourth time. And transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, fake laws. And two times he don't obey his own laws. Two times he's believing fake law. He's enforcing fake laws. Look, they talk about Canada in the Declaration of Independence for abolishing a free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government. The state of Colorado, the state of Kentucky, the state of Georgia, the state of Florida. Those are arbitrary governments, and enlarging its boundaries as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies for taking away our charters. Okay. Magna Carta. The Magna Carta means great charter. Abolishing our most valuable laws. That's the fifth time. I just realized that. That's the fifth time they said it. They said we didn't have a problem with laws. They said we've been keeping these laws from Moses. We ain't got a problem with law. They said we acknowledge the power of law. What did Supreme Court of North Carolina say? The Supreme Court of North Carolina said that all men are independent of all laws, except those prescribed by nature. What he said in the Declaration of Independence? He said, uh, when the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with one another and to assume among the powers of the earth the equal and separate station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. He said, we didn't have a problem with law. Our issue was not laws. What they say about us, they say all those sovereign citizens, they think they don't have to obey law. No, we don't have to obey law. Because California, I read it earlier, they said we don't do civil law. We don't do Mexican law. They said we do the common law of England and California. Suspending our own legislators, that's what happened in the Civil War, declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. There you go. Yeah, they said our issue wasn't laws. You know, they said we ain't got a problem with laws. We got a problem with laws, foreign laws that are unacknowledged by our ancient principles. So yeah, that was fun. So yeah, what's the law of Massachusetts? Common law of England, baby. Common law of England. Call an attorney on Monday. Yeah, what's the law of Wyoming? Oh yeah, it's the code. It's the code. It's the code of Wyoming. It's the code of Virginia. It's the code of Wyoming. It's the code of Alaska. It's the code of California. That's not the law. That's not the law at all. They'll say, "Oh, well, you get in there." People tell me all the time, "Well, brother, I tried to recite these Supreme Court cases and talk about the common law of England. They say they only do statutory law." Oh, I said, "Where them statutes come from?" Okay, well, the statute's not law. The statute is the bylaws. What they say is the customs and bylaws of a corporation. Okay, so they talking to themselves. They're not talking to us. They're not supposed to be talking to us. You hear them say all the time, "Oh, they came out with a new law." There's no such thing as a new law in Florida. Florida said they got a law. They got their law from 1976. The end. That was it. There's no such thing as a new law. And then you trace that law go all the way back to this guy named Moses. What are you talking about? There's no new laws. North Carolina said you don't even have to obey law. The laws don't even talk to you unless it's the law of nature. Boy, we in trouble. We in trouble. All right, it's 10 o'clock where y'all at. It's 9 o'clock where I'm at. If you're on the West Coast, which I don't think nobody watched this on the West Coast, I will try to do this again. I'll try to get on at like 5 o'clock Central Time. I'll try. 5 o'clock Central Time. My phone battery's about to die. So we'll try it again tomorrow. ConstitutionAcademy.org. 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 Do a money spread. Do a money spread. ConstitutionAcademy.org. All right.